Good afternoon and good evening, and thanks for stopping by. Welcome to Starbase Weekly, the RGV aerial deep dive into images he captured from the ground and air in Boca Chica, Texas. Our dedicated team will guide you through with the latest updates and theories at Starbase, Texas. To the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for future streams.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Starbase Weekly. This is episode 58. My name is Mauricio and I'll pass this along to Zach.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Starbase Weekly, as Mauricio said. Happy to be here with you all. And excited for another Starbase Weekly live stream. Pass off to Jax.
Well, hello everybody. Episode 58, I think. It's going to be a good one. We didn't get a flyover this week, sadly, but I think some pretty great ground photos, and it's been a busy week, and there's going to be some busy weeks ahead. But on that note, I'll pass over to Thomas.
Thank you, Jax. And it looks like we're still having some weather issues, and that's always terrible. But the best thing ever, we have our one and only Sonny. Look how happy he is. Those are my favorite pictures, of course, is always Sonny. And then we've actually got Mauricio for once. This is kind of an unusual special as well. So who took this picture, Mauricio?
My wife took that photo, and she did a great job. It was one of the first times that she was handling my camera, but she's always been into photography and all that, so she kind of got the hang of it pretty quickly there. But if you look at Sonny, that's not he's actually pretty dirty right now because we're at the mud flats over at the build site, and he might have been rolling around in the mud a little bit too much.
Yeah. He is so happy. Just look how happy he is. Thank you so much for taking those pictures of or actually your wife taking that picture of you and Sonny, because it's a especially special here for the two of you. And then in the background, that's Ship 25, I believe, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's jump right on in. First off, we do have some aerials of Massey's. What was going on here? It looks a bit unusual.
Well, like we were talking about earlier, the weather wasn't the best to do a flyover. It was initially planned on Thursday, but it was a nice clear day, and the clouds moved in. I think it was a shelf. The ceiling of those clouds was at 9,000 feet, and it was complete overcast. So they started moving in over Starbase, so that's why we couldn't do it. This is the following day, on Friday, which was yesterday, and we had it was raining out there, so you can kind of tell by the water on the lens. But it's better than not having anything, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's actually still pretty good. It looks kind of like little fog banks along the ground, but it's actually water on the lens. And we have a lot of things have changed over at Massey's here. And then there was actually one other thing that kind of happened that was a bit different, like where you actually were taking off from as well. That was unusual, wasn't it?
Yeah, so initially initially I had thought that, or I had maybe seen the sign, the no trespassing or do not go beyond this point, over at Highway 4 and the Massey's Road, or I'm not sure it's Massey's Road or Massey's Way. What do they call that road leading up to Massey's? Thomas.
I don't know. It would just be Massey's Road or something like that. I don't know if it's way, road, or lane, but it was just Massey's little driveway there. At least it was going through an area which would have been an easement with government property. So it would technically not be something that they could prevent people from accessing. But this area right here is their property. So that's where the fence starts, and that is literally their property.
Yeah, and big shout out to Starship Gazer, because he's actually the first person to go out there and get these type of shots from this view that you're looking at right now. And so yeah, he was one of the first ones to go out there and get these, or the first brave one to go out there and see if it was doable, But yeah, you can see the private property signs there on the opposite sides of the gate there.
Yeah, and then you've got some other signs over here about all the restrictions. So it's like no guns, no smoking, no this or that, and also probably some PEP stuff if you're there during testing, or who knows what else. I can't really quite read it. Oh, that's definitely the no gun symbol right there. But yeah, there's that at Sanchez as well. They've put it up all over the place. I do wonder if something had happened where somebody's like, why are there people with firearms on their tool belts on site, or something along those lines that prompted basically that sign to be put up everywhere. But I haven't heard anything yet, so it's still kind of interesting. But yeah, this is just an amazing view to get from this angle. So Jax, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so if you recall last summer, some of you may remember a test tank called B7.1. And this test tank was verifying the structure of Booster 7, more specifically its aft section with all 33 engines. And after sitting around for a few months, just kind of abandoned, they've put it back on the can crusher, and they have the straps on it, and they're going to be doing some more testing. So I'm not sure if they have the thrust rams beneath it, but it's still pretty interesting seeing them conduct this testing, because it's kind of late in the game and it's pretty delayed from when they finished B7.1's last series of testing.
And so being a B7.1, that would be a booster, and it would be equivalent to, 7. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Now, one thing is unusual is these stringers. I do not remember if it had them before or this is new. Are these the same as you remember?
So yeah, it is the same as before. What they do in the top half is, because the top half is just meant to essentially compress the aft section, they overbuild it. They make sure that it can't fail at all. So all that the main test is going on with the aft section, the bottom half of the test tank, which is kind of obscured in this photo, but I'm sure you can picture it, and we'll look at the drone shots in a little bit.
Yeah. What's your expectations? I had some expectations on what we're looking at as far as testing with 7.1. What did you think, or was it the same idea as we talked about earlier?
Yeah, it like I said, it was kind of strange that they've brought it up out of the blue. My guess is that as Raptor becomes more powerful, as SpaceX continues to develop their engine program, they're going to need to upgrade the booster. So it'd be interesting to see maybe how much this style of booster can take in terms of thrust and forces. So maybe that's what they're going to do. Maybe they're going to just push it to further limits than it's ever gone. If it holds up, well, then they can keep using this design. Maybe it won't, in which case they'll know what they need to patch up. But I can't be certain about that, right? It's hard to be sure.
It is highly speculative, but my only theory is that it's a test to destruction. I mean, what you're saying is basically steps up to that point, which would probably be more accurate, I would say, than the test to destruction. But that's kind of where they're headed, is beyond the limits to the point where it's either gets destroyed or they want to intentionally destroy it. And the interesting part is, if they're intentionally wanting to destroy it, is this entire top hat here, that I call it, you're compressing down, and if it fails down here, this whole thing wants to tip over, and it could damage the the can crusher or other things. I mean, this is part of the whole can crusher assembly. But anyways, it's just a interesting thought, and I like your idea a little bit better than mine. So yeah, let's go ahead and get to the actual drone shot photos here. We do have them, and they are pretty nice to see, and I also have a comparison over here. So yeah, I'll start off with this one. It's just a nice view coming in. So you can see the fence line right here where it's the no trespassing, and that white sign off to the left. So that kind of gives you a perspective of the entrance. And you can see the can crusher and 7.1 over here. And then what's going on? We traded 7.1 a couple weeks ago for this test article. Which one was this again? 26.1?
Yeah, this is ship 26.1. And it's kind of like B7.1 in the sense that it's testing out the aft section of a vehicle, but rather than booster 7, this would be for ship 24. And yeah, it did some testing. We know Starship Gazer got some cryo testing on it, and yeah, it's been taken off, and I haven't seen anything to suggest that it failed. So I think it might be okay to say that it had a good testing campaign, and they're done with it, at least for now.
We might see it get put back on there like this one if they're doing test destructions or way beyond limits of what they're expecting, just to see what it's capable of doing. I would hazard a guess that they might do something like that if they're doing it here, but you never know. But yeah, they've got a lot of people on site. So just the parking spaces everywhere that there's a potential parking space. This site is extremely active. So
yeah, it really is.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that is going on is what is going on with this basically fuel farm. So the question that is coming up, and we've talked about it before, is the tanks coming from 39A. We kind of have an expectation that we will see some of them appear here. So basically in this area, maybe even in this area, and then maybe even in here. I haven't actually seen any pads put up yet, but it looked like last week they were getting ready to do it. It looks like it was just these types of sidewalk type setups here, where they'll have the pipe stands going through here. But yeah, this is.
Do we have some images from the other side of the tank farm?
Let's see. We've got just one way around because it. Yeah, go ahead, Mauricio.
Oh no, I didn't get a chance to go to the other side.
You were worried about your drone just falling into the water or the bushes here, right?
I was afraid of getting too much water on the drone for too long. So I got these shots and just landed right away.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. That's risky, but at the same time, it's worth it. I mean, there's a lot of details in here. So as far as the fuel farm, we won't be able to see too much, but we do have a pretty good idea of what's going on based off just these photos alone.
Yeah, I definitely don't see any preparations for those tanks over there, which is interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could be that they just end up in this area or somewhere in here.
Well, they could
That's
also go to Sanchez, right? We haven't seen um, any more preparations over there yet, but we also haven't had a flyover in, what, 3 weeks?
it's only been like 2 weeks so far, I think. But actually, this is a pretty open area. So looking at these images, it's like pretty clear that they have moved a lot of soil around and even brought in, looks like to be some sort of gravel or something like that. So here's what it looked like last week. That is a huge difference. So just the amount of soil changes, and like you can still see they've got the concrete right here, but it's kind of getting buried by the mud. But that's like a pretty good area to just kind of judge based off like this and this area. They're even looking to be going in this direction as well. So they're removing, looks like, trees and other debris and getting the soil all shored up. Man, it's really changing rapidly. One thing we talked about last week was this area right here. It looked like the shelving, everything was being pulled off the shelves and getting ready to be shipped off to, let's say, the inventory tent. Well, it does appear that they are headed that direction. Let me see if I've got a better shot. Actually, I think this would be the best one right here. So yeah, there is pretty much nothing left on the shelves, and there's just a few things on the ground, but they are, looks like, tarped and covered for now. All the rain that they've been getting, I guess they've just had to throw things together to protect what they had. Or maybe those are just totes, black totes or bins.
Yeah.
And this area is pretty cleaned out. I mean, I see this new transformer and I'm like, wait, where did this come from?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting how much they've cleared out over here just in general. I mean, can you zoom out a little bit, actually? Yeah, I mean, just that whole area to the right was a lot more packed last week, and it's funny because all this stuff moved from Sanchez, so now it's kind of like, okay, where did it go now? Whether or not it's back there or if it's like thrown away or something like that. But I feel like most of the things here actually they have plans of using for the most part. And like everything at Sanchez that they didn't plan on using has actually been thrown away. And actually, there's 4 trash bins back there right now.
Yeah, so there is some of this where they're collecting debris and other things and throwing it away. Probably scrap over here, and looks like wood right there. This one's empty. Actually, there's a 5th one right here, and there's another one that was back here that was green last week that it's got debris and other things, but it looks like it's for all the pipe work. So they've got all this pipe work that they're putting together here. So it's got insulation and other things. Because I'm seeing some of that in here. So it's just the little bits of contents from the construction. And what are those? For a second, it looked like perlite bags, but that wouldn't make sense. Looks like just dirt.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. I mean, it almost looks like the Fondag bags, but not really, because they wouldn't leave them open like that in the rain. There's no way.
Yeah, and you can see that it's top open and it's all wet and muddy, and that's very unusual. It kind of reminds me of these, but the Hesco berries, but these are much smaller.
Anybody need dirt?
One thing that really stood out to me when I saw this, I'm like, doesn't this look like part of a QD system or the platform for a QD system?
Yeah. So this is one of the, I guess, what I think is probably one of the bigger things that showed up at Massey's this week, because this is the equivalent of a cryo station quick disconnect. So at the launch site, beside the orbital launch mount.
Yeah, you got the QD system right there.
Yeah, they have these. I put a picture in live comms. There are these little areas where the ships or a booster can pull up and be cryo tested on their transport stands. And this is an identical system compared to what they use there. So there's ship 24 at the cryo station. And just at the base of it, it's the exact same structure. It's virtually identical. So there's a QD system for a ship that showed up at Massey's for a ship to be cryo tested on its transport stand. Now, I haven't seen the signs of a pad for a transport stand to mount to, but that sounds like they're going to be setting up some new spots to cryo test ships.
Well, you did say it was rocket testing, so it implies a lot of different things. It could imply we're going to actually fire engines here, but this would imply at least cryo. So they're moving their cryo station away from being here, because this will be an option for cryo testing. But now we have the additional option of just going directly to Massey's here, and like this would be kind of the area I'd expect somewhere in here that they would do it. They've been doing a lot of shoring up of the soil underneath in this area specifically. And the pipework kind of looks like it is headed in like this vicinity here. So like the cryo lines would come here and here. But yeah, that is really an interesting way to do it. It does just it does get rid of the whole like Raptor test stands potentially if we're looking at just a cryo station, but it would be an option for them to go through and test ships and potentially even boosters.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things about that is like, if you do anything other than cryo stations, I mean, so for example, they have the framework for what we refer to as test stand C over there on the right side, and so there is a possibility that they could set that up here. However, I think it's a little bit less likely because doing that requires a large crane to be on site in order to lift the ship off of the transport stand and then onto the test stand. So unless they plan on buying another LR11000 or something smaller, 1600/2, like the Blue Doe that they used to have, the blue and white one that saved SN9 in the high bay. Unless they want to have another large crane like that here, it's probably only going to be cryo stations, right? And well, I mean, they do have a semi-inactive crane available right now that's sitting there at KSC, so it's not impossible that they could bring that here. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting because that cryo station QD cannot be used on a regular test stand, right? So it's only for using a transport stand, I think.
Yeah, this specific one would be for the transport stand.
So that frame is not the same as the one that's on test stand A and B, right?
No.
Right. But it does have that whole QD part where it just as the cryo station that we were just looking at, it's perfect for that. And as you said, you can drive in, you do not have to lift it. The problem with a test stand C setup like this is you have to somehow lift it, or you'd have to have a test stand that's like buried. And that would not make sense, especially if you're doing some sort of static fires. You would have to like bring it over with the SPMTs and drive it and then set it down, and like none of that would be something that would make any sense.
Yeah. Hey Thomas, we have quite a few questions on Massey's and quite a few donations. Do you mind if I read them out?
Oh yes, please do it.
All right, so we'll do a rapid fire here with we got a lot of donations coming through and a lot of questions as well. So we got first one's from Joy Bag of Donuts. Happy to start the train this week. Let's go. Thank you for that. 55 Chevy Guy, $10. Let's get the donation train rolling. It's always great to see sunny pics. Thank you, 55 Chevy Guy. John Dobker, $10. You bet. I'll jump on board. Thank you. Yasada, $10. Okay, I'm on. Thank you for that. JK Video, $10. No message on that one, but thank you so much for that. James Wilson, $10, paying for screen grab of you and Sunny. And by the way, James, I did create that shirt that you wanted of me and Sunny. So it's already in the merch store, and I'll post the link later on. Thank you for that. Rocket Profit, $10, count me in. Choo choo. And when we got Aster Joe, $10 all aboard. And Nose Cone Gel, $10. 10 biscuits for a sunny day. Thank you so much for that. And Sunny appreciates that as well. We have Jax with 11 euros hopping on to the train as well. And sorry, got a lot of donations coming. We got Jared Hammond, Australian $10. from 5 a.m. in Australia, incoming Deluge for Massey's or OLM. That's one of the first questions.
Okay, so to answer the question is basically saying, where is the pipework currently for that deluge that we were talking about that we're suspecting it's going to be happening? Right now, that pipework is no longer here. If they were going to do a deluge here, it would have stayed here. They could still do something of a deluge if they're doing some sort of Raptor test stand or something like that in the future. But right now, it does look to be more of a cryo station. So it would be everything saying we're going to see a full water deluge at some point at test orbital launch site for the Starship. Wow, well, IT. I could not think of the word.
All right, I'll continue on with the donations and the questions. We got our very own Techno Dino. He's the one producing this show here, so I appreciate that. $10. I might as well hop on the train too. Thank you for that, Felix. We got Giant Rat. The question is, could this test be to fulfill some kind of requirement for the FAA license? And that's why they're using the test tank here. That's the question.
So that's something we talked about before. Is what our understanding of the FAA license was, but that's what it used to be, that they would have to test like this. The only thing that this would give them is a sense of their safety number, and that would be allowed to be used in the statistics for the FAA. But what they used to do is they would go through and do test articles, then give SpaceX the test data off of those with the vehicle, saying before the vehicle even flies what we expect based off of our test articles. That no longer is the case. Now it's just SpaceX. They want to test it for themselves. And then there is that safety number. That's the only that's left pretty much for the FAA, is they want to find out if this vehicle is going to be able to hold all the cryo and everything else. It's basically part of that safety number. So that test we did with the WDR, that is part of those safety numbers. That's why they evacuated the entire site when they did the cryo the other day on, was it Tuesday or Monday? My goodness, it feels like it was weeks ago. But yeah, that is part of their whole safety. And like they have to do the WDR anyways. That's part of what their procedures need, because they need to change those and modify those for the actual flight. If they have seen off nominal values, they need to correct for it. So sometimes it's a conservative number. And one of the other things that they have tested on that was like just evacuating the area, like how far they can do it and what the issues are that they will run into. They need to have those prepared for the actual flight.
All right, we're almost through with the donations here. We got Sharpie, $5. Choo choo. Thank you for the captions. And yes, we not been on top of that lately. We also have Spanky Drummer, 1999. Thanks for all you do. Keep up the good work. And the question: do you think the water deluge system from Florida is a must install before the first launch?
Zach, do you want to go for that one?
I don't know. I'm a little bit on the fence about that. I mean, we'll see when we get to the launch site here later in the show that they've definitely been making massive amounts of, well, not massive amounts, but it seems pretty clear that they're in a rush to get this installed. Essentially, like basically setting it up to just come off the boat and go straight to its destination, which is kind of rare here. Like things usually go to some sort of storage location temporarily, and often they arrive like long before they're needed. But man, I mean, the size of that barge that they loaded everything up on was pretty large, so it seems like everything that was on there is in a rush to get here. So, with that being said, it's really tough to tell. Like, one of the big things that we haven't seen, just mainly because we haven't seen aerials yet, is the fact that they're going to need to like run a lot of those pipes underground, especially around the OLM itself. So that is a major task. And if they had started to break out the concrete surrounding the OLM, I feel like we would know, even though we don't have aerials. So I don't know. It's really tough to tell. These next few weeks will be like pretty telling, especially after the 33 engine static fire. I think whatever they do after that will, within days after that 33 engine static fire, we'll probably have an idea of like whether or not they're going to do that.
All right, thank you. The thing that I'm thinking is similar to that, is that the 33 will tell them what they need. But the major one is they want to get that flight done. And if they have to replace the fondag, it's not a huge issue. So replacing the fondag is going to probably happen anyways with the installation of the water deluge, and you will end up with a situation that's pretty much the same. So I think they'll just go for the test flight without the water deluge, and then after the flight, they will install it. That's my 2 cents.
All right, we have another question here from Benjamin Klein. Maybe they're simulating the 33 engine static fire, so the real static fire is only after this can crusher test is finished. Could that be? I believe Benjamin's referring to the 7.1.
Yeah, I mean, this thing has already gone through essentially 2 testing campaigns so far. So I almost would have thought they'd have done that, but it's definitely possible. Yeah, you might be right in saying that they could be, they might not have. Like, it is interesting timing that this is happening. This is being set up right before the 33 engine static fire.
Well,
And
we have some more evidence on that as well, right? If we look at the ground pictures.
Yeah. So which one do you want to look at specifically, Zach?
The one that did we have one that showed the skirt?
No,
No?
those were other photos.
Okay, sorry. I guess I'm mixing these up. All right. Well, yeah, ignore what I just said.
But either way, it wasn't suggestive of all too much. It's just that they are trying to compress it. Like, that's why it's on the can crusher. So yeah, maybe it's going to be something about loads on the engine mounts, or maybe it's just going to be more max Q testing. Maybe they've changed something in the, what if they've changed something in the profile and they need to run new tests on it? There's a plethora of options that.
Oh, one thing I just realized, I thought tested with water for 7.1. Was that right?
7.1 used cryo.
Okay. I just couldn't remember exactly where it was tested, because there was Sanchez testing that they did that was with water for, what articles were they? Anyways, that was the big one that I was thinking about.
But yeah, a lot of good progress at this site.
Yeah, it is really happening here. Like, this is the new test site for everything, it seems like, but it doesn't actually seem to be the Raptor test stand that we were expecting on this. So far, it's a cryo station, so that would imply just, rocket testing. I do wonder, as I said before, if we'll see boosters be tested here as well, especially if they have more capacity of tanks coming in. Like, that would be another one to say, that direction. So right now we've got nitrogen, and then this would be oxygen. So this is way too much for like a methane tank. But for a tank like this, or for other test articles, it would make sense.
All right, we have a couple more questions. Sorry, Jax, you were going to say something?
No, I was just agreeing with him.
All right, we have the next question here from Sharpie. Has all the hippos at Massey been moved elsewhere?
I think we've pretty much seen the hippos disappear from here. Let me double check to see if there's anything that's. We've got the one right there and one right here, so they're still here.
All right, we have another one here from JK Video. Mauricio, what does RGV stand for? And it stands for Rio Grande Valley, which is a region that consists of several counties in the South Texas region. And we have another question here by Justo Mimo. What are those metal tower leg-like sections by the Grove? And where are those new ship lifting arms?
So the new ship lifting arms would be at Florida. So what we're looking at here is the pieces that would be like for test stand C, right in here.
I think he means the lifting jig for the nose cone.
Oh, okay. Yeah, those are at the integration site. So I could give you a quick sneak peek before we get to those later. So that is these right here. So that's at the integration site. So the integration site is at the far end of Starbase in this area right here. So that's what we'd be looking for.
We have another question here from Starbase SR2. What flaps are in the top left of Massey's?
Yeah, so over in the It's kind of a green space. They're the old aft flaps for serial number 16, which was scrapped a handful of months ago. It's been a while, actually, but they've been saving the flaps. They seem to like to save flaps. I mean, they have Mark 1s on that restaurant. They had SN8 stored in like a shed for over a year. Yeah.
I mean, it seems like
flaps.
they're collecting them as if they are trophies of some sort.
I don't know if anything about SN16 is trophy-like, but anyways.
Right, but the flaps are they're like the thing that you could use for structural elements on buildings or all sorts of like interesting ideas of what you could use these for. I think we saw a flap piece somewhere in California. It wasn't the whole flap either, but it was like the entrance of a building. It was just like some awning. It was really weird.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, they keep these things. I mean, Ship 22's flaps, all 4 of them, I think they're keeping. But we'll touch on that in a little bit.
Okay. I just noticed one other thing that kind of piqued my interest is that this piece right here, you could see it looks to be a whole piece. And going back to this shot, you could see that they've been cutting this apart. So this is being scrapped. That wagon wheel shape, it's being cut up and removed and probably thrown in the dumpsters.
We have another question here. 55 Chevy guy, Steve. Is the Massey site going to replace test stand A and B?
You'd have to have some sort of puck shucking system at Massey's in order to replace test stand A. And test stand B, it would be very similar. You'd have to have a stand to do Raptors on. So you'd have to move your crane. So if they've removed test stands A and B and they put them here, like you could do it, but we don't have any FAA documentation or anything to say that they were planning on static fires here yet. They could still do that in the future, though. But yeah, you'd have to have full test stands, and the crane would have to come here.
All right, we have another question here from Crane Man. Could the crane just drill holes for concrete pillars to support a large concrete pad so heavy material can access the future test pads at Massey's?
That seems to be what it's doing now. It's going all over this area of the site wherever they expect to have the vehicle be driving with the full, let's say, Starship, or maybe even a booster in the future. They plan on going through and shoring up the soil by doing that. So that's drilling into the soil all around here. And it looks to be that they were setting it up over here as well for potential drilling, but it could be that this is just where they're disassembling it.
All right, we have another question. Any idea what is stored in the sphere tank at Massey's? This is a question by Cody G.
The what tank?
Any idea what is stored in the sphere tank at Massey's? The sphere?
I suspect it's going to be gas. So we've got the air gas vaporizers over here, and I've seen tanks like these that are similar to these in the sense that they're high pressure gas tanks. That's my best guess. So it's not anything factual as far as a marker or detail, but I've just seen similar tanks like this that'll hold higher pressure, and that would be just a gas for nitrogen.
All right, we have a question from D. Juan G. Could they build a mini port on that river like the KSC churn basin?
The only connection right now is right up here, and it's just this tiny little stream you'd have to go through and pull out all this material, and there'd be all sorts of environmental issues by doing that because this is technically wetlands right here. So they're not touching this or this area at all. The only thing that's close to that is they will put up like an area along here so that any contaminants from, let's say, lots of nitrogen or whatever will stay inside of this area, and it will not go into their basically, like, you could call it like almost a retention pond or something like that. It's very stagnant on this side. But as I said, this is the only area that has the outlet. And if this is overfilling, it floods over around to, let's see, you can see it right here. It floods into this, and that's the only outlet from this side to this side. And then it will drain off this way.
All right, I think we have one more question. I don't know if there's a limit here, but if you guys have questions here, just type exclamation point question so that they can get fed through the bot here. And the question from KP10 Flam is, doesn't it make sense to have the all future cryo testings of ships and boosters at Massey's and all static fires and launches at the launch site?
Yeah, I think so. Zach, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense because the two operations kind of collide right now. Right now I feel like they're always waiting on, like they want to do static fire test on ship 25 right now. They probably also could be doing a cryo test on ship 26 right now, possibly. But because they really can't do that at the launch site, I guess they could do it at the launch site right now on pad B, but also with, preparing for that 33-inch static fire test, they really probably would prefer not to do that. But they could do that simultaneous operation at Massey's. I mean, theoretically, they could probably do multiple tests there at the same time if they wanted to, and they could also be doing a test at the launch complex at the same time. So yeah, I mean, it just really overall expands their ability to get things done faster.
And to kind of add on what you're saying is that this will allow them to right now go through, do the cryo tests at you're using basically the fuel farm, the orbital fuel farm right here. And that gives them flexibility. But when you want to do static fires at that table up there, you are basically running into some issues of scheduling. So this really does open up their schedule for where they can actually do testing. So I think that was it for those questions so far. Do you guys want to move on to Sanchez?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Let's head over.
All right. So I've got a nice view of the Starbase sign as always. So this is Sanchez for those of you who are tuning in. So this is an aerial shot from 2 weeks ago. A lot of things have changed. So we'll see some things in this area specifically, and then along Remedios. Those are the two areas we really look at least from the ground shots here. So first off, one thing to keep in mind is where these pieces are at. Those kind of moved around at least a little bit. So we'll go over that here in just a second. So what is going on here? Which ship is this, or was this?
Well, I guess
Sorry,
to
booster.
to provide some context, a couple of weeks ago, or maybe some time ago, Booster 8, which had been retired in favor of Booster 9, left the rocket garden and was scrapped. It was outdated, and it was just better to move on to the new and improved Booster 9, all fancy. So this is the bottom section, the thrust section, where all of the 33 engines would have gone of Booster 8. And I think one of the cool things about this photo is that you can see the liquid oxygen header tank inside of it, out at the top. So that tank holds liquid oxygen for the landing portion of the flight for boost back and landing. They don't use the main tanks. They use this little tank.
One thing I've noticed is that they have these boards still in here, so they never removed the scaffolding, it appears, for Booster 8.
Yeah, and I mean, this section, I don't know, we've kind of gone on a bit of a rabbit hole with it. I'm not going to go into that today until we have at least some idea of what's going on, because we're a bit stuck. But there are these pipes on top of the header tank that we believe are related to the pressurization for it. And we're trying to figure out how it's pressurized, how that system works. So hopefully once we figure that out, it'll... I've been talking with Starship 3D about that. Check out his Twitter, Starship 3D. He makes some fantastic 3D models and prints of Starship. Some crazy internal models. He's impressive. But
one thing I've seen from him last week was those pictures we posted, and there's cutaways, kind of like how this is cut away, but you'd look from the top view down or the side view for his models. They were very impressive.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess one of the other things we should talk about with this section is there's something missing here. And they did, in fact, take off both of Booster 8's hydraulic power units. And these HPUs, just acronym makes it a bit easier, these are used to control the gimbaling of the center 13 engines, so to pivot the engines to steer the vehicle. And these are only present on Booster 8 and below. But we also know that at the launch site, which I believe you would have discussed last week, or the week before, whenever, but they've removed an HPU from Booster 7. So it's possible that this was just part of the scrapping process, or maybe they're going to take one of these HPUs from Booster 8 and put it on Booster 7. We're not sure, but they've been removed. So,
Well, we removed it off of 7, as you mentioned, and the funny thing is, it's like they do not have any more extras of this. They have switched over from Booster 7 and 8 to Booster 9 being entirely electrically driven. So you basically would have these kinds of batteries on there instead. You'd have more of these instead of an HPU unit and all the fluids that go with it, which would require tanks and just more weight in general. You still require these batteries on this, so you basically end up in the same place. So you have motors versus basically batteries. So these are high density batteries that release energy very quickly. So instead of it being like the Tesla battery, they actually jury rigged the Tesla batteries that we used to see for the HPU units, basically everything from SN4, 5, 6, and so on. They were using those as jury rigs so that they would output power very quickly, but they were very damaging to the longevity of the battery, where these are meant for a lot of power out very quickly. That was their intended goal. Then you just go through and charge it up like normal as a reusable system. Still don't know what the paint scheme is all about, though.
yeah, and because this entire HPU assembly is gone on Booster 9, these batteries that we talked about, they're under the chines now, with the COPVs, which is why Booster 9's chines, if you look at them really closely, they're actually just a little bit longer.
I've always wondered about this, as well as the like how many of the batteries do they have underneath the chines? Have you been able to get a count of those, or is it the same?
I think it's still just the two, one under each.
That is very impressive, because you were extremely reducing the weight if you don't have to have this whole HPU unit on Booster 9.
Yeah, for sure. No,
yeah, you don't see it here though. That's it's on 8 is God, but
there is other hardware that comes with the new electric gimbaling system, but I think Elon had mentioned that it does end up saving mass in the end.
Yeah, that's impressive. And it's interesting is that Starship in general is a very heavy vehicle. You're talking, let's see here, about 120-ish tons for the Starship, and then was it like 250 with the ullage, which is the gaseous pressure on the inside. You still have to weigh that for the booster. So it weighs a lot. So they're basically offsetting all of that weight towards the engines. So the weight gives them reliability, but they still are trying to niche that weight down, even on the HPU unit.
Yeah.
Which transport stand is this, by the way? I just kind of thought about it, and so for Booster 8's transport stand.
Which transport stand is that? I think that was only Booster 8's, maybe? It might have been like built and just for Booster 8.
That would be the third transport stand then?
4, 7.
4.
No, 4, 5, 7. It's third or fourth? One of those.
Yeah, it's hard to track these. They need to like paint it on the side so we could figure it out. But yeah, this is one of the nicer ones. Like you can see the lines going through it. Looks really good. They still need to paint all of this though. They get to a point with transport stands and they're like, "Oh, we're done." And it's like, "Wait, there's just pipes sticking out everywhere, and you're not done."
Yeah, one of the weird things about this one is so all of them are different. Like every single transport stand is different. And one thing that's weird about this one is the rusted bars that go around the bottom, or the bottom of this image. Yeah, they go all the way around. And and that is not really present on any of the other ones. It's very odd. I don't know if some kind of if that is supposed to be like for conduit or something like that, but it doesn't look like it with how rusty it is.
It's offset right here,
Yeah,
but it looks like it would be for some sort of hydraulic system or something, but it's not. It's not even aligned. And it doesn't even completely go around on this section right here, but the rest of them it does, and then it kind of jogs up and down. And it still has that that new feature that they have for the safety rail or the safety lines right up here with the ladder and the walkway. They did that with first Booster 5's transport stand, which was the second transport stand. Then this would be the third, I think, or fourth, because Booster 7's transport stand was directly for Booster 7.
It's going to end up like the ship transport stands where we eventually lose track.
Yeah, they really do need to label it for us. But getting to the transport stands for the ships, we were just looking at that a moment ago. So these are what would be for the transport stands of the ships, as far as I understand.
Well, this is a bit of a strange stand. It's an older one. I think they've used it for test tanks before, but they've been making... I haven't been looking at it too closely. Have they been modifying it a little bit?
Yeah, they've been adding these materials on. It's about the same from last week, as far as I can tell, for both of these. So we've got this one on the left here that I really don't see anything changed. Then there's this one here. We've maybe have one more addition in these parts. I can't really tell because the picture last week was obscured from this angle over here. But they may have been additional parts that they've been adding to this. So it should look like this one when they're done. One thing I was kind of interested in was, like, we've seen this writing before, and it's like, what do these numbers stand for? And I went through and looked them up, and it's like the first one is the heat number, which the heat number references the series. So like this will be actually the same on all of these units. So it's like, here is the same, not exactly series, but it's like the product line manufacturing number is what you would normally have as a heat number. And then you've got your sales order number, part order number, and then part number. So this would be, it's basically a purchase order and part number. So it's just kind of one of those funny things that it sticks out. You see everywhere all the time. People don't really mention it. And the rest of the writing you see here is from the welders themselves. They'll put in a bunch of that. But anyways, it was just a kind of a refresher. So there's nothing else really going on for these. I'm almost feeling like they want to make these to work with ships. And the one thing it's missing is an area to bring in Raptors. Like, I expect to see that still.
Yeah, it's interesting that they feel the need to strengthen them up a bit if that's what they're doing, and it seems to be what they're doing. So yeah, maybe we'll see something for them show up.
It could be the exact opposite. It could be what we're seeing here will go to Massey's as part of the ship stands that they will go through and do the cryo testing on. That's just an interesting thought or possibility. So you want to be able to have a system to test with that. This would shore up a lot of the strength. I mean, you've got a weight that could be placed up above to take it down, basically that brunt amount of weight.
That does make a lot of sense, actually. Like, you want something larger that can hold a full... I mean, they have filled... What's the most they've filled a ship while on the... They have done a full fill on the cryo station, right? Using a regular transport stand?
For the ship, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a bit shorter, so this would imply that the stand that we see at Massey's would be a bit longer. So that's one thing we should go through and check later. But it's an interesting thought.
Yeah, and I mean, even if it's just because they want to make more test tanks and just they want to have stands adequate enough to carry them, it'll be interesting. Maybe we're going to see some more test tanks show up in the near future. I'll keep my eye out.
These came about as well recently, and we have some that are kind of similar in the aerial shots. So let me actually go back to those real quick. So I'll refer to this image just because it's a good one for the full overview. we have these similar shaped items right over here. They're painted black, and they seem to be part of like the test stands or transport stands that they're building. But I can't really confirm that. It just kind of looks similar. So do you guys think these would be for the transport stands? Because it's very odd.
It looks like a similar construction, like just based off of the way they're built. But I've never seen anything like them. Not that I've looked, but that's interesting.
Yeah, it seems like it's missing a lot of extra parts too. So you have like a bolted on plate here. I would expect the top part right here should also be bolted on, but they've left it completely naked here. And it's like, okay, what's going on there? And you can actually read the labels a little bit to see like what it says the date is right here. So it's 1/20/2023. So these are 8 days old now, at least from when they came out of the GSE building.
Yeah, it says GSE on it, right?
Yeah. It says GSE all over the tags right here. So you see GSE, and then TOT. That one is the one that still is harder to figure out. I've seen a couple of different options for what it could be. It could be turnover time, transmit operator time. It could basically be also a part of a tracking system right here. You see additional digits, but I've seen these on the other, just the stands that we were looking at before, that TOT, which could also be referring to just a tracking number, really. It's like tracking of tidal or tracking of transit or something like that. Could be a number like this. Sorry, I've been really into the acronyms lately. Yeah, these are just unusual. So moving a little bit more into what I was mentioning earlier at that overflight view, these moved over. So these are the mounting systems for the pins for the booster transport stands. It looks like they don't plan on building one for a little bit because it looks like they're about to get a new one from Booster 8.
I think that so part of the stuff that's coming in on the barge from Florida, one of those items is a booster transport stand that doesn't have those on it. So I think these are waiting for that transport stand to arrive.
Yeah,
I saw a couple of transport stands. I didn't remember it being a booster. Do you have a picture of that? Because that would be cool to throw up if we have one.
Yeah, let me see if I can find a good one.
But yeah, I agree for sure that they have or they did load on an unfinished booster transport stand, and we know that this hardware, this clamp hardware, and all these are like the accessory pieces for the transport stand. They've just been sitting there without the actual framework showing up for a couple of weeks now. So that could make sense that they were waiting for the one to be shipped out from Kennedy.
Yeah, that's coming in around the 2nd, so that's going to be a lot of fun. We'll probably have some shots of that for next week as well.
This is a video. I don't know if this is going to work for you.
Yeah, I can bring up videos.
This is from Spaceflight Now. And it kind of scrolls by really quickly, but you can see the transport stand in the background. So if you pause it, you'll be able to. I guess you don't even really need. Yeah, right there in the top left.
Wow. That does look like a booster transport stand, if I've ever seen one.
This has actually been there for over a year. It was Fariel, actually. Fariel and Greg Scott got pictures of it like about a year ago. I remember she messaged me and she was like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Is that a booster transport stand in Florida?" So it's been there for a very long time. It's really odd, but yeah, I mean, they constructed it down here partially, and then now they're shipping it to Texas, I guess. I'm assuming they had planned to be using them soon down there, but that is definitely not the case.
Yeah, so we'll talk about this stuff a little bit later, but they've got the tanks, this transport stand. I remember seeing that they had some stands. I didn't remember seeing it was a booster transport stand. That is kind of exciting. And then we also saw manifolds and other things. And it's a whole thing we'll discuss here probably at the end of the show here, because there's so much more going on there. But yeah, it does kind of make sense that they are waiting for that these pieces are are for that particular item, and it just got ordered and sent here instead because they knew that it was going to be used at Starbase.
A long time ago too, because these got here probably about 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting the way, like, seeing the way the logistics work out in the end.
I mean, it seems like 3 months ago or something happened at Florida. A bunch of things that were going on just kind of suddenly stopped. Like, we're still looking forward to seeing Mega Bay being built. Still nothing. It's just sitting there with a crane that costs them every day. And it's like, what is going on? Like, it might be that the one thing that might be a good reason is the builders who are working on the building that's the Star Factory. They're the steel workers. They may go from that building to the new one. That's the hope. But it's like, why is that crane just sitting there? That's going to cost them a lot of money.
Yeah, I think that Mega Bay is going to be what holds them up at Roberts Road. Because they haven't even started erecting steel. But,
You know,
the Rocket Garden.
Yeah.
that Mega Bay could actually be better used in Starbase right now, I think. So maybe they should ship the Mega Bay to Starbase and build a second one, because they definitely have a need for it, I think. There's tons of, like, it could just be the scrap bay, you know what I mean? And then they would never have to, like, halt anything for scrapping operations.
Your theory, your idea, it's like full of holes, but at the same time, I love it. I want it. It's like they're about to build it in Florida, but no, we could use it here. It's better suited for here anyways.
Just literally build it where the scrapyard is currently.
Well, I mean, and you
Yeah.
bring up a fair point by saying that they are kind of at capacity with their production, where they are taking up a lot of space in the base, and that sort of ties into what we're seeing here with Ship
Yeah.
24.
A perfect example.
Yeah. So Ship 24 was moved to the Rocket Garden a few days ago, and I think let's kill that here. It's not retired. The chance of it being retired is slim. So we'll talk about, they've already done, actually they've done a bit of work on it already. While it's been sitting there. And one of the interesting things that I saw when I was looking at the photos.
You want to go
Well, yeah.
through and start with the big one that you were talking about this morning? I was just jaw dropped when I heard this. It's like,
Yeah.
yes.
And it's pretty exciting. This morning, I think they have 4 off right now, but they've started taking off the lifting points on the nose cone. So once those are off, they have these steel plates that get bolted on. Some of them have the tile attachment pins. Each tile has 3 pins that lock it into place. And then they'll be able to tile over the nose cone completely and finish the heat shield. And that's what you do for launch. That's they're getting there.
It kills the whole
Also on
idea
that
that
note-
Ship 24 is dead, and I love that.
Also on that note, Jax, the whole thing comes with the heat shield tiles on there already, right? That plate that goes on
I
there?
thought it came with the pins, and then they just throw on some heat shield tiles right after. Very quick.
I mean, I guess there's no reason why they couldn't pre-tile it, but
The last time
I'm
I
not
saw it,
sure.
because remember they put it on and then they took it back off?
They did them on 20, on
Yes.
Ship 20 in 2021. I can't remember. Maybe they were pre-tiled, but regardless of that, it shouldn't be a quick job. I wouldn't be surprised if they're installing the cover plates by tonight. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that is huge news. So we talked about, like, yesterday, the things that we need to see before flight. So these were obviously the pins at the top, the lift points, I'm sorry, need to be replaced. So those need to be replaced and tiled. The next area was actually these. So I think these are the dummies right now. So there should be orange ones instead of these black ones, because these are kind of like some sort of EPIRB, or basically a data recorder, a flight recorder, that they will be dropping them off either in flight or just let's say in flight on this one. After it's detached from the booster, it drops off one of these, and the same thing would happen, let's say, for the other side, or maybe it's just having 2 for redundancy. They could be dropping off post-flight or into the ocean after the vehicle has attempted a atmospheric reentry. Not a the atmospheric reentry. But yeah,
Yeah.
those would be ones to expect to be replaced and changed.
But yeah, and this is a good view of what they've done to the vents. I know they did this a few weeks ago, but they've sort of stuck these plates on that reduce the diameter by a considerable amount.
And it kind of redirects it at the same time. So instead of it being the center, it's down further. So it's going to kind of redirect the stream a bit.
Yeah, I think every vent on every vehicle has been modified in a different way. So it's pretty interesting. It's sort of like they're turning them into proper thrusters.
Yeah,
But
so the thing that this does is it decreases the volume a little bit that can go out, but it increases the velocity by quite a bit. So that's really neat.
Change the sound pretty dramatically.
Yeah, it's going to be whistling. They've got another one right here and here.
Yeah.
So this one will
So
rotate the whole vehicle.
Yeah, those are the roll thrusters. Those are pretty cool. It'll be interesting because they're pretty small. So they must work though. I mean, I'm sure they run a plenty of simulations.
And you've got this big one right here. We love to call the cowbell and a couple other things. But that that one actually gives thrust down, and that it allows it to settle all the ullage. The liquids to the bottom, and the ullage will settle towards the top, because in space it'll just want to free float around, and it'll look pretty cool.
You know, it's pretty interesting though that the cowbells on ship 26 and onwards, it seems that they've deleted them. So I don't know what they're using for thrusters in that direction anymore, but it's not the cowbells.
I wonder if they're using the actual engines directly, so they just vent out from the engines.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Because that's one way you could do it. It's got a nice large cone on 6 engines.
Now, something else that was just in the last photo that I think is also another pre-flight topic is the flight termination system box.
Yes.
So the flight termination system consists of 4 charges, 2 on the ship, 2 on the booster. They're right over the common dome. And essentially what they are, they're remote explosives. So what they do is if the vehicle goes off course, or if there's any chance of putting people in danger, these will fire and the vehicle will go up in a fireball. It will split open the common dome. The two fuels will mix because the common dome is what separates the oxygen and methane tanks, and it will be quite the explosion.
And this is the common dome line right here, isn't it? This line?
Yeah.
Let me see here. What's 6 feet?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, this would be... Wait, what? No, it's this one. Yeah, this one is it, because this is the 6 foot mark.
Yeah.
Okay. Had to double guess. Yeah.
The charges themselves, you can see there are 2 panels on there that are kind of like separate, and those are where the charges are going to go. And we're actually kind of seeing preparations to maybe put that in soon. So if we head down to the quick disconnect, because the Starship stack is 119 meters tall, and then you have the additional height of the OLM, their man lifts can't reach the FTS on ship 24, which means that the safety pin pull has to be before stacking.
And that's this area, isn't it?
Well, yeah, so they'd have the remove before flight pins, and what they do as what we believe that they're doing as a safety system is they have this cable in the top right. You can see this top right port, and we've seen a label on this port, and it's called the Autonomous Flight Termination System Inductive Inhibitor. Now, essentially what we think that means is that there's some type of electric signal, some type of charge being sent to this port that tells the flight termination system whether it can be armed or disarmed. As that's like your safety. It's a hard safety.
And just to expand on that a little bit, with it being named an inductive, so basically it's very similar to like an inductive oven, or sorry, stovetop, right? So like when it makes contact with that other surface is where it transfers that charge, right? So this is
Yep.
basically the same thing. It's like a flat plate to a flat plate contact, and when they contact each other, that is how they basically inhibit that FTS system.
Exactly that. And that to me, what that means is that they're going to hand over to because Starship uses what's called an AFTS. And what that means is that rather than somebody on the ground having the button, the vehicle can blow up itself. If the vehicle goes off course, it will say, okay, I'm terminating the flight.
The vehicle knows where it is by knowing where it isn't.
Yeah. That's a system that they've used on Falcon 9. And when we saw that label saying the AFTS inductive inhibit, that also told us that Starship uses an autonomous system. So if it's some kind of inductive system like that, I'd assume the command for that system to take over happens just at liftoff when the QD retracts. And I think Mauricio got some photos of the QD to show that in the past few weeks they've installed this system on the tower, this inhibit system.
It makes me wonder if the entire electronics design had additional changes that need to be made, at least on the ground side of things, to make it work the way they wanted it to. And they were also changing the design slightly.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm sending a photo in live comms. It's just uploading right now, and it'll show what I'm not certain if they added it before the wet dress or after the wet dress. I'm inclined to think it was probably before, based off of when they were working. But before this was just like it was kind of a capped off port. There was no wires going into it. It was just capped off because they've never reached this point before. They've never had a reason to inhibit a flight termination system. So that's they've added this connector onto the QD, and it's just like Zach said. It's sort of this domed connector that just slots into the ship, and it'll put a charge on the system. I think Thomas has the photo right here. So it's just on the top left of the QD, and you can see this domed piece. It's just above the alignment pin socket thingy.
Is it this one right here?
That's it right there. So it's just this domed thingy that slots in. And that's brand new on the QD, added within the last handful of weeks.
I do wonder if it's similar to just a Qi charger that's like spelled QI. It's for your cell phone and it's a wireless charging. I wonder if they're using a similar technology there. It's just sending a direct power to the system to say you are currently not active by being powered, and it also would allow it to, let's say, charge the batteries. Something like that. That would be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of thing is a fantastic sign of where they're at with Ship 24 and Booster 7, because this is flight termination stuff. They're getting there. They're finally close.
By the way, also got a nice little picture here from Twitter that works out pretty well. So let me grab this. So this is from Nick Henning. This is what it would look like.
I didn't know you were actually going to play that. It was a joke.
Might as well. It's a good
That's
one. You
funny.
Posted it.
Yeah, I was making a joke in the background about show the SN11
FTS or something
animation to show what it would look like.
That's a good rendition of it. It's just there's no fog, which is good for this, but it's not correct for reality. Yeah. So thank you for Nick Henning for posting that, and thank you for grabbing that. I love that. I had to look at it and go, oh, we got to show that. So yeah, the other things that we've kind of thought about as far as modifications or changes is the last one is just this little bit of heat shield tiles on the lower side. They've they went through, did a static fire, and just shredded the heat shield tiles. And I do wonder if they're only doing the leading edge and then afterwards it doesn't matter, because that's kind of what this implies. It's the same thing on this side as well. Wow, I just have to keep on going, I guess. Let me see if there's a little bit better of an image. Thought there was two of them.
I mean, there is a question here. I guess it's for Jax. Black Eagle asks, what would happen in the case of a loss of power to that connector? The one you guys were just talking about a little while ago.
That is something I have thought about, and I can't figure out an answer to that. It seems like I'm sure they have some kind of solution for that. Maybe it's like that inhibit is only needed when. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the vehicle just wouldn't be safe. Maybe they'd have to rush to destack and get the pins back in. I don't know.
I think they have more than one inhibit. So they've got this, and then they also have a signal that's being sent to say to arm and activate it. So that is a way of saying it's not just disconnected and now it's armed. No, it's got multiple ways of I guess you could say inhibiting it. There's like probably a physical one. So you have a physical pin system that you can basically say it's when you've pulled it, it's now an active, potentially armed and active system. And they will do that when they are basically putting the thing together and they install it into the vehicle. They'll pull a pin. There's now a physical connection that will be able to be made to say that this is now active at that level. Then the next one would be this system, followed by the last one, which is like you hear on Falcon 9 that the FTS will be safed before they land on the drone ship, and even before I think the first static, or not the first, the last engine burn before it even lands, they will safe it. So there's like at least 3 different safety mechanisms, and there's probably even more built into it for redundancy and everything else. And that's why you would have the 2 charges is redundancy. You want it to blow up when you need it to blow up.
Yeah, I mean, with something like explosives, you want to have more than one option. I'm seeing a lot of people in chat mention it as like there needs to be a redundant kind of fail safe, and yeah, that's exactly what it is. There has to be, and it's also possible that this isn't necessarily the FTS itself, but if it's just telling the autonomous system that it can't take over. You like imagine your vehicle for some reason it's powered on. It's like, oh no, I'm not moving. I have to blow up. That would be bad. So yeah, there's a lot of things to consider with that. It's just that's an interesting thing that they've added onto the ship, and it's kind of suggestive of where they're at.
And I do love the fact that it makes it safer, that it can autonomously do it if it knows where it's not supposed to be. And it's like, I'm over in an area I'm not supposed to be. It's time for me to go. Where if there's an intermittent connection issue, let's say with the ground will be hitting the button. It's not going off for a good, couple of seconds more than it should. And that puts people in danger. So the vehicle deciding, okay, it's time for me to go. That's a really nice way of fixing that problem. So let's move on a bit from the dreary and safety of an explosion there.
Hey, Thomas, before we move on, just wanted to get in a quick donation here from Brent Dean. 10 Canadian dollars. Hit the likes, people. And that's it. Thank you very much, Brent. Moving on.
Yeah, thank you, Brent. We have a lot more pellets coming in. These are, you see it's covered in water. It's wet cardboard. It's like, oh, that's terrible. But these are just bins. So there's nothing as far as problems to go with this. So they have so much more going in. So these are bins over here as well to the inventory tent. We were even looking at this piece. Jax, what did you figure out this was? Actually, pieces.
This piece. Yeah, so to me it looks like the bottom portion of a booster's LOX header tank. So like we saw in booster 8 there. Yeah, the bottom part. Actually, here, I'm going to send you a photo.
All right, and then one thing to look at is these pieces while you're setting that. I love this one on the right. It has this little C.
All right, so this is an updated model of the our speculative model of the booster's aft section, made by none other than Chameleon Circuit, our resident 3D artist. So that you can see at the bottom of the liquid oxygen header tank, there are some pipes. They're the ones furthest up on the header tank, just right there. And that's sort of, I think, the part that we're looking at. Those pipes feed liquid oxygen to the ring of 10 engines during the boost back burn.
And later on, I think we'll actually use this picture again, but keep an eye out on this piece down there. It's completely covered and closed right here. I'm not sure if it's completely enclosed or if they enclose it later, but I think we found the piece for that. That's I guess you could call it the stand that the entire header tank sits on. Well, it sits on the mount at the bottom. But yeah, I love this C. It's like just kind of like, is that supposed to be capped or is that for standing for something else? It's kind of neat.
Yeah, and I mean, we're seeing with this inventory tent, everything out here, it's all very new parts. Like they're the kind of prefabricated, get shipped into Starbase, super fresh stuff.
Yeah, so we have a valve here, might be for cryo or just water. Probably water. I don't see a long stem on it, unless it's missing the stem and it's just sitting off somewhere else. The cool thing that you were mentioning is all of this really. You've got just stringers everywhere.
Yeah, stringers. I think there's some chines there. I think there's just a bunch of like super early kind of parts that we rarely get to see. Mauricio even got a shot into the tent, which it actually saw something really cool and kind of random that I'd never seen before. And we'll touch on that in just a moment.
Look at all of these stringers. Like these have lightning holes that it's light annealing, not like electricity, but it's making it lighter. And I don't think I've seen these parts like that before. They've always been like an oval or something, but these are a bit more like an isometric shape here. But I think these would be on the inside as stiffeners for maybe the booster.
Maybe.
And you've got all of these nice curved pieces. Let me see if I can go right to the. Oh, let's see here. There's still so much to look at. But yeah, let's go look at the inside of the tent you were talking about here.
So on the very top shelf, and just kind of a super cool and kind of random thing, that's a clamp for a booster. That's like what the OLM clamps onto, and it's just this thing that's been machined and shipped to Starbase, and it's just there sitting on the shelf. I don't know, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, to go along with what you're talking about and this whole inventory tent here, I talked to somebody in the aerospace industry recently, and SpaceX has been going around looking for basically vendors and suppliers. Those vendors and suppliers are making stretch form steel and other components that would be able to be put into Starship. So like this entire tent is going to get filled up very quickly. And then they're going to have additional capacity on top of it. So you're just going to see like whole bins come in or people come in with carts, select the parts they need because they'll have a parts list. And that'll be for a specific component of the ship. And it just have constantly this like pick packers just going around picking up parts, pack it into just a little box or just a bin to be sent to a specific areas of Starbase. It's like Amazon's little mini warehouse, but for SpaceX. And they will have the suppliers be aerospace, really. So they're making aerospace grade parts that we talked about. I said stretch formed. I thought I saw some pieces a bit ago that were stretch formed, but anything that are like the dome pieces or the nose cone, any of that's all stretch formed. Really, you're pulling it and you're pushing on it in a way that makes it into the shape you want, and you cut off any excess. It makes it stronger, all sorts of cool little elements there. But also lighter. But the cool part is they're expecting a buildup of Starship production very rapidly here. So Elon talked about one every month. So we're going to have 5 full stacks. That's one thing he mentioned. Let me see if there's anything else on the inventory side. Yeah, actually go back up here real quick. So the one a month is essentially what they're going to be building for Starships, but at least 5 full stacks this year, and then one every 3 days is their ultimate engineering goal. Is the vehicles we want, like 1,000 of these to be launched to Mars eventually. That's their direct target, and they'll be able to hit that, especially with replacing Falcon 9 eventually. All the flights will be Starship. It'll be cheaper, but they'll still make money on each of those. And I also expect Starlink version 2 to be aboard pretty much every launch for a customer. So it'll be basically a ride share. They'll launch their Starlinks, and their customer gets their satellites to be launched in a huge discount comparatively. And it's even rated up to like Falcon Heavy if you still launch 54 version 2 Starlinks. It's really smart. All right, let's get to some of these pipes that we were asking about earlier. The water deluge pipes, right?
Yeah. Zach, are you here?
He's muted, so he might be talking. Zach?
Sorry about that, guys. I had to step away for a second.
Oh, that's fine.
But yeah. So more than likely, this is probably part of that water deluge system. It kind of just given away by the black pipe, or I mean, it's essentially iron pipe, I would assume, not really steel. But yeah, I mean, this is essentially, as soon as we saw this, kind of knew it was going to be for water. Clearly, they haven't started building that water manifold yet, since this is still sitting there. But yeah, I mean, and then we have those pipes in the background, which appear to be the same diameter. It's kind of tough to tell from that far away, but
This should be.
sure.
Oh shoot! I was looking at this and was like thinking it would be like a 36-inch cone, but this guy standing here kind of throws it off. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, if he's 6 feet tall, then that's what, like almost 4.
Yeah, and this kind of looks like it's about 4 feet as well in this one.
Right.
You've got a nice area right here that kind of describes the height. He's using these planks and other things just around here. But yeah, it was about 4 feet, I think. We measured it last time. But yeah, I'm expecting these to be headed towards the launch site. That's the question we were answering earlier, that when will we have the water deluge? Either before or after the flight for OTF1. I think that it'll be after. I think they'll just go for it, and then they'll replace all the fondag. But it could be that there's an essential element that they need, that they realize, especially after a 33-engine static fire, that could say, oh, we have to have this, and that delays the flight, but it also makes it more reliable as far as the flight itself, and they get the full test. Wow, they even got inventory going on this side too. That's nothing in here yet, but the shelving is quite apparent. And this looks to be at the end of Remedios, looking down towards the Sanchez. So Rocket Garden is just to the immediate right, I believe. Oh, or maybe the tent's just to the immediate left. Mauricio, can you help me figure out where I'm looking at, just real quick?
Right there, you're looking at the north side of the tent. Of
Okay.
the Sanchez, looking west.
Oh, okay, so yeah, it's just right at the first entrance to Sanchez, or second entrance, really. The first one on Remedios, though. So you've got the gas liquefaction plant to the right of here. You can see these pieces. We still expect to see those all set up eventually. These are the cooling towers. They're technically not towers, but that's what they're called. So this one is something we talked about a little bit last week, and especially last night. These were existing, these little pieces, last week as well. But this one's been taped over. So the this whole assembly is going to be used for the nose cone jail and be testing the nose cones for max Q testing, as well as potentially other directions, especially with these. These will help test, let's say, in flight. You could do the whole landing sequence where you're looking at it again. They tested that before as well.
Yeah, yeah. That's going to be an interesting test when they get around to it. And I think we'll touch on that test article once we get to the build site. Not that there's been all too much visible external progress, but we'll get to it.
Yeah, and this is a newer item that I think it actually goes with that whole assembly. So we see these little feet right here. It looks like this is this end up based off of how this is set. So this would be your lifting point. And you've got your ropes and other things that you can attach here and here. But this would be the base. So I think this would essentially sit there for the hydraulic rams. And you could technically do, let's say, 3 hydraulic rams instead of a single one. So we have this little plate right here. It looks very similar to the ones we were looking at before. So this is where you would attach a hydraulic system. So the hydraulic system goes all the way through the nose cone up to this point up here. You can see this is basically a giant eye. You would basically have a pole attached to this, and it goes all the way down. But you could essentially test with, let me see if I've got the image directly. Here we go. These pieces right here. So these would attach to the top right here, it looks like. And you could just basically pull in different directions. It still goes to the very tip of the nose cone at the very end. You might have some other areas you're attaching to on the inside. So you could technically have like 4 different hydraulic points. 1 pulling straight down and 3 pulling at different angles. So you can really test it to all of the variations you'll see during, let's say, a max Q flight. So I really hope we see this happen before the actual test flight, because otherwise it's like, oh yeah, we found out it doesn't work, and then you've already thrown away a vehicle and it didn't survive max Q or something. I would love to see this happen before then, though, because we've seen one other test back with SN15. There was a nose cone number 12. We nicknamed Bob. I got to see it test in real life, and that was pretty cool. Nobody else was around, and I thought I hit record, but I can't find the video file, so that stinks. All right, let's see if there's anything else I'm missing here at Sanchez. I think I covered everything.
Yeah, shall we move on to the build site?
Sounds good.
Oh, the build site.
So this is... Yeah, let's answer some questions if we've got some.
Yeah, there was a couple of questions here. One of them was by MEC Texas. Question. Can FAA require Deluge system to suppress the noise?
That's a good question. If they're going outside of their bounds of what they've said to the FAA, they would probably need to go through and do additional sound suppression, but it would only last you maybe 5 seconds, 4 seconds at most, depending on how long you're holding onto the vehicle. And as it launches, it only takes it as soon as you release the hold down clamps, about 7 seconds for it to clear the tower. So it's not going to do a whole lot of good. So you turn on the engines, it's sitting there static firing, essentially, because until you release the hold down clamps, it's like a static fire, except you've got a full vehicle of cryo in there, and it might be an engine says, an abort situation. You may either fly without a few of the engines, but it could be that they have like a limit of saying, we can fly without 1, 2, or 3 engines, but any more than that, we do a full abort, and then we do not release the hold down clamps. So we might see something like that, but it wouldn't really be an FAA thing, because you would have to like do water deluge over the whole tower at that point, and the vehicle would have to now have like mufflers, and that doesn't work. So it would be an upgrade to the FAA to say, or update to the FAA to say, it's actually louder than we're expecting according to the 33 engine static fire, something like that. The decibel levels that you're looking at would be for, let's say, Maria Pointer and where she lives. It's like the closest you can get still for the launch site as far as most of the the people who live around here, except for maybe the area along the Rio Grande. She'll be looking at like a rock concert outside of her back door. It'll be that loud for all of 30 seconds, 40 seconds. So it'll be pretty loud. But after then, it's just going to be diminishing as far as the noise, because your altitude is increasing and you're not really going to be hearing much after that point.
All right, we have I guess I'll pull out another question here from Benjamin Klein. How would they lay down the new massive water pipe from the OTF under the concrete berm to the OLM?
That's a good question. I think we should hold on to that and when we get to the launch site.
All right, we can move on.
Yeah. Do we have any donations or anything else that we have questions on for Sanchez or anything like that?
No donations. I did want to again thank everybody for the support and just give a flight update real quick. I'm looking at the weather situation. I'm gonna try and get us booked for Monday, which is in a couple of days from now. If that doesn't work out, I'll do a back update on Saturday morning. So yeah, just stay tuned on that and moving on.
Yeah, thank you, Mauricio. That's a real struggle, because even if you've scheduled a date, especially when you go to the airport, you went to the airport on Thursday, right?
I actually went to go pick up the pilot because he didn't have a ride. So I really wanted to make this happen. So I went out there to pick him up, and we saw the clouds moving in. So we saw it wasn't going to work out. So we headed back to South Padre Island.
That's a lot of scheduling, a lot of work, and it sucks that the cloud and weather coverage is just not good enough for a flight.
Yeah, we're doing our best.
Yeah, thank you, Mauricio. So yeah, let's go to the build site now. So this is about 2 weeks ago now that we're looking at, but it's just a quick overview. So this is what we have from the build site. Is basically everything from this side on over to this side of the site. So quick rundown. We've got mid bay, high bay, mega bay, or wide bay, whatever you want to call it, scrap yard, ring yard. This would be the Star Factory, tents 1, 2, 3, and this was tent 4. It got shrunk. This is the low bay, or the windbreak as they call it, the GSE building. And this one, it's basically all the pipe work. I don't know what to call it. It's just another kind of GSE building. And that's pretty much it for the just quick overview. So we're now looking north towards right here. You can see Sapphire Towers over there. But so Jax, do you have something to say on this part?
No, I guess if we're going to get started, if you go into your ground photos, we have a couple of sections out in the ring yard, some piled up tiled sections. If you scroll up, ship 22 and booster 8 were mutilated. It's up a bit more. They were mutilated, cut in half, and yeah, right there.
Here we go. So it was just after a couple of images. I was thinking it was further on down.
So yeah, they've just been piling up some of they've already scrapped some, destroyed some. The sections with domes are notoriously hard. But,
so this is booster, Starship, obviously, because of the tiles.
Yeah. Yeah. What we're seeing here with tiles is from ship 22, which has been scrapped. Then you have the common dome section of booster 8. And you can see the flight termination mounts right there, actually. Those are on left and right of the wiring raceway. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting is all of the steps that you'll see. Like usually the flight termination system, that's going to be the days before the flight. So that's the huge news. If you hear we've got flight termination installed on any Discord channel or Twitter, that is the pretty much last step before we have flight. We could basically have that even up to like a week or so before we have flight, but it's still like we are aiming for it. It's happening. And that's part of the FAA stuff there as well. So it's a safety system. 22, we talked about this before. It's probably, my guess was, and I think Jax agrees, was supposed to be a stopgap. After booster 4, they had some problems with it, and they knew they were not going to be able to fly the booster. They needed to fly something on booster 7, and they thought, well, we've got this vehicle. It's in pieces. We can throw it together, and it's going to be the skirt of like 23 and parts from like 21 and 22. It was the Franken-rocket of all Franken-rockets. It even was going to probably have the engines of Ship 20. Like, that's what they were going to do to make this thing work. And then they're like, oh, wait, never mind. We don't need it. This is the piece that I think is actually at the bottom. This is a brand new one. You can actually see the straps are still present. The piece that I think is below the LOX header tank of the booster. That's just my theory and guess based off of the way it looks. It's got a lot of structure there, and it looks similar to something else we've seen like that.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff to go through here, so I guess we should keep moving. What else?
Okay, let me just actually jump back real quick, see if there's anything else in here. I guess I had just a couple more pictures from Sanchez, but we already covered a lot of that. Talked about this last week. The crane is there, so that's good to see. They've got a little bit more scaffolding now.
Yeah, and that's inside of the expansion on the rear side of the mega bay.
They've got some nice offices up here. But yeah, this would be a perfect crane for moving Raptors around for the booster and Starship. So I'm hoping that that's what they use this entire area for is that kind of work. I'm not sure if you've got a picture here, but there's a couple of larger doors that they'll cut into the mega bay. And then it was funny, is like the first thing you spot when you saw this image, Jax, it was this dome.
I saw the dome.
Yeah, you don't see the obvious stuff, and I'm very similar to that. I'm like, I see these things, and I'm looking around like over here, and you spotted that. It's like shiny object confirmed. So actually, let's go to that dome. Which booster? This is a booster aft section. Which one is this?
Yeah, I guess this would be for booster 13, which is pretty crazy to think that they're working that far ahead. But yeah, it's pretty. The dome itself seems to be finished, like ready for sleeving.
Is there anything that's off about it that's different, or is it about the same for everything else?
You know, this has been a bit of a topic that we've mentioned lately. Not to say the boosters aren't still going through design changes; they definitely are. But they definitely seem to be happy with some of the designs they have. So like this, I can't see any noticeable differences. Same goes for things like the inner stage portion of the booster. Some things, at least it seems like they're fine enough for now.
This is a forward section of a Starship over here. Is that for booster or Starship?
That would be a Starship.
Okay. Do you know which one that would be for?
Nope. No, they have two out there right now, so we aren't sure who's for what.
Yeah, and they've got that whole nose cone that we're going to talk about here in just a bit. That's going to be fun. Let's see. Is there any of these you also want to go through as well at the this ring yard? Because there's so much stuff.
Well, actually, if we go back to this photo with Booster 10's methane tank, this is something that I think it was funny. There was a lot of drama in like the live chats, the YouTube chats about this. When Booster 7, they were fully stacked with Ship 24, and Booster 7 was depressurized in the methane tank. And
you have to guide me towards the image you want for Booster 10's methane tank. It's this one right here. This is the forward section, right?
Go to the fully stacked methane tank. Actually, that I thought we'd have a better view. Top left. And there were some quite noticeable dents that formed, and a lot of people were like, "Oh no!" But so you can see that there are internal stringers. You can see the weld markings for these internal stringers. There are 24 going around the circumference of the booster. And these strengthen against vertical loads. They help strengthen up the booster. And Mauricio saw a new section come outside of the tents in one of his photos. I think it's down a little bit more. There it is.
Which one is it? There's a lot.
Use the photo on the left.
This one right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now that this is also a booster methane tank. This is Booster 11's methane tank.
That's a lot of stringers.
There are a lot more. So they went from 24 to 84.
Ooh, and you can see the actual lightning holes on this one.
Yeah.
They've got the little triangle, and these are wide open, but it's stiffeners as far as the load goes.
So
That's cool.
what it seems is that while the denting and all that doesn't pose any imminent risk to the vehicle, they're not being reused. I'm sure it will weaken the steel over time, but it's not a major concern for these vehicles. I think it does seem like they're trying to stop it. And once you start adding payloads onto your ship, now you're adding a lot of weight. So they are strengthening up. They're beefing up the methane tank, just as they're doing with the ship's liquid oxygen tank on ship 26. They added stringers into that.
I mean, Booster 4 had 0 stringers.
And that was not a good idea. But
well, I mean, it's a good one to start with to say, can we do it without it? And it's needing more pressure to hold it up. And this at least will be better as far as strength goes. Even if it doesn't have as the pressure inside, you would have the strength, but it's going to weigh more.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's kind of the direction I think we're seeing them go. Is they're trying to save mass, but they're also quickly realizing that you can only go so far. Like the vehicle is, for the time being, that it might have to be a bit on the heavier side. But yeah, that's one of the interesting design changes with Booster 11.
And one thing I'm looking at this and I can say these pieces right here, we're going to see scaffolding appear. So we're still looking at a manual weld for the methane to, this is basically the LOX section at the top and then the beginning of the methane section. So this is where they usually weld it, and it's going to still be manual.
Yeah, I'd say that seems to be the case.
So they like that practice so far. It gives them a bit more control, I guess.
Yeah, maybe in time we'll see them move over to a robot. It took them a while for the ship to get that all done with robots.
One of the interesting things to talk about is with these vehicles, this is something I really hadn't considered, but let me see if I've got a nice tall vehicle here. Perfect. Stacking tolerances. That's a thing. So if you have a slight tolerance issue, so it's like it's within tolerance for all of these rings going up, but eventually your entire vehicle can be off by like several inches or feet or whatever. It's like there's a tolerance level that they have, and it can be kind of swaying or wobbly. Especially when you look at like the top versus the bottom, it could be going off to one direction. I wonder how they're taking care of that. I know that the methane section is one area that they can. So they do this weld where it's this is 4 inches right here between these two welds. And I think they have it so it can be there, I guess you could say slop for the stacking tolerance for the LOX tank to the methane tank. This is where they will straighten things out a little bit. But that's my... it's my only part. Yeah. Is there any other pieces you want to go through over here on the... I've kind of skipped through a bunch there, but any other pieces that you want to go through on this side of things? Because I see a lot of Ship 22 just sitting around. And
yeah, Ship 22's seen better days. Not sure how to feel about that. If you go just to the next photo over, I think it was the next photo over. Okay, it wasn't the next photo over. Some photo of the ring yard. Okay, here we go. Ship 27. They're finally kicking that back into gear. Last week they got it stacked, the tank section, they put the aft section onto it. That's been welded, and they dropped the downcomer into it 2 nights ago.
This is the ones you described had stringers on it.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah, you can see the internal stringers in the liquid oxygen tank on Ship 27, which is new for 26 and onwards. But yeah, you can that's coming along, and they just yesterday morning stacked the nose cone of Ship 27 onto the payload bay, and Mauricio got a shot into the high bay showing just the tip of it next to Ship 26. I think it's down.
This one right here, or this one?
That one.
Okay, so we'll start with this one because it has the full view. So you're you're pretty far out here. Is this the, let's say, San Martin that you're at, Mauricio, when you took this picture?
Yes, that's looking west towards the, what is that, the high bay.
Yeah.
There
Yeah,
was a question. There was a question about whether there would be a production site at the launch site. I think the answer is no, but maybe y'all can go into detail on that. Like, for example, like a build operation over there, like they see at the dome yard and all that.
Yeah. So the thing that you're kind of, the question's kind of hinting towards, in a sense, is vertical operations for, let's say, rockets in general. You'll integrate your rocket vertically. Let's say in a building that moves over towards the launch site or something like that. All of this will be vertically integrated from the get-go. The question is where they will install satellites. At least for the customer satellites and payloads, you will want a clean room environment. And that one's the tricky one. It's like, where do we have that environment? We don't quite have it for customers yet. For Starlinks, they just have the integrations building, and then it just has the PEZ loader, which loads the PEZ dispenser on the Starship, and you now have the ability to launch Starlink version 2s. And I think pretty much every version of the Starship that will be launching cargo will have those basically PEZ loaders and dispensers being used. But yeah, going back to the vehicle here, this is when it was being stacked. Like you can see that they've moved. Well, actually, these two pictures are the same. They haven't really done that, but it's under load right at this point. You can see the straps are all pulling down directly here.
Yeah, and that's still being welded today, I think. So ship 26 and 27, those are flapless, tileless ships. The only ones for the time being, at least.
But
And,
27 too, but it has the ability to launch cargo, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's sort of the weird thing about ship 26. 26 doesn't have a PEZ dispenser door. You can see the gap where it should have gone in the top of this photo. They left, when they were producing the section, they left a gap in the stringers for the door, but they never developed it. But on
so
ship 27,
weird.
On ship 27, there is the a normal PEZ door. But moving on from our weird nose cones, we have the nice nose cones. And ship 28's nose cone. It's a good looking nose cone. It's actually a bit different compared to ship 24's. And I made a quick comparison, and I'll send you that.
Yeah, they always look really nice when they come out, and they're getting better each time. But then they mess something up, and it's usually down here. So they're leaving these tiles completely detached for now until they're done welding and everything else.
Yeah, so ship 28, you can see, if we're looking at the side parts that go behind the forward flaps, you can see that they changed up the patterns of the tiles. On ship 24, it's a very jagged kind of line right there, and on ship 28, you can see that they have a much more straight kind of pattern going on, which is pretty cool. It's aesthetically pleasing, some would say. But
now,
yeah,
I also wonder about these kinds of tiles right here. Are they thinner tiles than the rest of them, and that's why they're changing the style or those kinds of things?
Oh, I think they have some different thicknesses, but I'm not certain how that's laid out. I'd have to look into that.
It's just one of those good open questions that I know it doesn't get answered directly, but it is cool to see.
Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of cool to see. This nose cone is in the ring yard now. Waiting for stacking eventually, probably in a couple of months. But yeah, they're good progress. It's always nice to see design changes, and this is one of many design changes on ship 28. In fact, I think one of the weirdest ones we kind of talked about last night was that if you look on ship 24 here, behind the flaps on the aero cover, there's this silver piece that protects the hinge.
Right here, yeah.
Yeah, right here. Ship 28 doesn't have that. It's all completely exposed on the hinge. And I think Mauricio's photos kind of show that they were from the dome yard perspective.
I think he went to the mud flats to get that view. So
I think I saw it a bit above.
There's
But
these
in
ones.
an effort to...
Oh, there it is.
Oh, that's 22. Yikes.
Oh, never mind. It was a good comparison of 22, and it was view of 22 and 28, I believe.
Yeah, so I think it was just up a bit further. And yeah, there it is from the dome yard, top right. So that silver backing piece, you can see underneath the aero cover, it's missing. That's because it isn't there. That you as you increase the mass, they're trying to reduce it, and ideally there shouldn't be plasma behind there, so you don't need the cover.
Yeah, think about it. It's like plasma blades that are directed at the vehicle. It will create a bit of heat that can get in here, but it's not as much heat as the direct heat from the like the atmospheric oxygen, nitrogen, and whatever else is up there, that it's hitting with the heat shield tiles at really extreme speeds, but it's very small amounts of it. So it's basically slowing the ship down. It's taking that basically potential energy, turning in kinetic energy that is heat, and that's how it's slowing down. It's kind of an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah,
and I do wonder if they'll put like some sort of paint right here.
I will correct myself. I did say that was ship 24. It was ship 25, but forgive me.
Oh, that's fine. They're siblings.
Yeah,
and it's like before it's painted. That's the same thing.
Yeah. So what else do we have going on here at the production site? I guess we have in the low bay, we have our tipless nose cone.
Yeah, let me see if I can spot that one. I usually go through these things in order, and now it's out of order.
Yeah, I'm trying to save some time here and just go over the major events.
I think that's at the end here, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So not incredible amount of progress here, but they are working on it. It's in the low bay, so they're doing something.
What was this one called specifically at the time?
This was assigned to ship 29. And I think the safest bet is to call it by the serial numbers that will not change for it. And that's its nose cone serial number. So this specific nose cone is nose cone number 31. And because of pathfinders and scrapped vehicles and mistakes on nose cones, it's 2 off. But I mean, it ends up evening out at some point. So yeah, this is nose cone 31, and I think that's the safest name to call it, NC 31. And because of that, I think what we're going to say is that until there's further evidence that ship 29 is being skipped over, they may be continuing it with new parts. Reassignments aren't unheard of by any means. So intent 3, they do have a new nose cone. We're just kind of calling that ship 29 for now.
Yeah, this could be 29.1 in a sense. Like it's a version of test article. It's not the actual ship, so they would put 0.1, 0.2, that kind of thing.
They could have reassigned it to any random serial number, and until we can confirm what has and hasn't happened, we're just going to play it safe.
It's 16.1. There you go.
It's 12.2 or something.
Just some random number there. But yeah, let me get back up to the nose cones up here.
Yeah. So there's the
old nose cone of 22, as we mentioned before.
Old garbage. They ripped off its flaps and mutilated it, and you have this is what we're calling that ship 29 nose cone. It's coming along pretty quickly.
I like the tape. It's like these are the ones that are specifically at the bottom of all of this that are being glued. They've got the blue like painter's tape. These are all painter's tapes, so it doesn't leave residue, I think. And it looks like they've either got the strips in a set size or they're really good at cutting it now. Nope, it's really good at cutting because this one's shorter.
But yeah, it's coming along nicely. So you have ship 30's nose cone in the back, and then just visible ever so slightly behind the gantry, you have ship 30, the top portion of ship 31's nose cone.
What nose cone number should that one be?
That would be nose cone 34.
Sheesh, that is a lot of nose cones they've been going through. I
Yeah,
skipped a few a
production
while
is-
back, but
Production is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good view of the heat shield on 28. Very nice heat shield.
yeah, I mentioned that earlier. It just looks so good. I don't see any cracks or deformations or dents or other things that are a problem with it. I really do want to see these go away as far as how they do this. Like they're changing something about this. I'm not sure exactly what, but part of it is how they are doing lift points. So right now the lift point is down here for lifting the Starship. Obviously you can't lift it from here for the nose cone. So you basically have the nose cone, the heat shield tiles, the barrel section for the basically payload bay, plus like a 3-ring with a forward dome. So that's a lot of weight. I want to see something with eyelets or something that's removable or something that's smaller than this as far as weight, just to save some weight with this area. This is structural as well as something to hold it by. So there's quite a lot going on there.
Yeah, these nose cones are pretty impressive.
I'm wondering when they'll if or when they'll ever get to robots doing the tiles. Like they're fragile, and robots aren't great at fragile.
You'd almost have to use like suction cups or something.
Yeah, and you'd have to use an AI or something to do the placement of it, because it's each one can be slightly off. You have to change that variance with each tile you're sitting on. The pins, the location of the pins are pretty uniform, but they can still be off because the way the pin has been set, it still could be at a slight angle that you're not expecting. So you have to jiggle it a little bit or something else to just kind of get that pin right in.
Yeah, there's so much variability to it that I wonder if it's even feasible. But yeah, I don't know.
Just double check and make sure I didn't skip through anything, and I did.
Oh boy.
So this is an area that we always like to talk about. It's just the GSE building back here. This is very unusual because we now have a plate that looks to be for, let's say, boosters to sit in. So you would have another plate that goes over the top of it. So you'd expect probably some number of either 5, 10, or 20 of these to hold up a booster. But if I remember right, this would go across all the way. There should be another one. Oh, you can barely see it right here. Yeah, so this is just a single piece, but it's in a pair, essentially. So you'd have to have at least a couple other elements similar to these to really hold it up, or something else to hold it up. What is it for? I have no clue. It's just very odd. And we've got thing 1 and thing 2. I love those names. That is so funny.
Yeah, that's
I think they're just trailers, if I remember right.
yeah, it's fun names. So, I think we also have some photos.
Well, go ahead and stop me if you see anything that you want to jump at. I see some garbage.
Yeah,
I
let's talk
don't know
about
where
the
this is.
garbage for.
Yeah, what is this from? Any clue?
All right. It looks like we have some wood structures. There's some pipes off to the side. I hope you aren't all being bored by this. We're going to talk about this for a while. So, if we zoom in on the
Just kidding.
but yeah, we can move on to Booster 10 in the Mega Bay. We have some shots from the mud flats.
Okay.
It's just down one. Like if you
Ooh,
scroll down.
do you want to talk about before we get to that, do you want to talk about these at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not certain what's going on here. There's a Pez dispenser being built, which suggests that they must have another payload bay that needs a Pez dispenser. Keep an eye out, I guess.
That's good news.
Yeah.
And
Always
apparently they've
moving.
got tents for rent around here. I think that's actually just before. Oh, here we go. So here's the pieces you were looking for. I think
There's just up a little bit. There's a photo from the mud flats into the Mega Bay. Booster 10, we haven't seen that final stack with the aft section quite yet. It's still waiting on that.
And you can actually see it the stand for once. This is very rare to see it like this.
Yeah, there's usually stuff in the way.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the way, but it's still visible at this point. That's pretty neat.
But yeah, we're still waiting on that. It looks like it's pretty far along. It has its raceways and vents and all of that. It's a nice tank. It's a good tank.
Yeah, they're coming along quickly, and as you mentioned before, it's got the 24 stringer variety. That's changing to be very different for that methane section. On
Yep.
what was it, ship 11? You said?
Yeah, booster 11.
I keep saying ship every time. They're all Starship. There you go.
And ship 11 of all ships. I mean, oof.
Oof. I know. Sorry. These will probably end up, if they are planning on ever using them, which I doubt at this point,
Hope they
at the
don't.
inventory tent. But the thing that they will probably want at the inventory tent is actually the racks. They're like, oh, we've got extra racks over there? Okay, get rid of the flaps. Just throw them on the concrete. We'll take the rack.
I don't know why they're wasting rack space with these. I sincerely hope they aren't putting these on ship 28. So, for reference, these are ship 22's aft flaps, and they are mangled. Those tiles have been through some bad stuff. They're chipped and dented and cracked, and the insulation is turning all brown. It's literally, please don't use these.
I always think that they just want to use them for like coffee tables or something crazy.
Yeah. Those are older pieces that I don't know why they're still sitting around. Those were
there's
actually
that TOT number and
these were
work order.
These were flap arrow covers back when ship 26 was meant to be tiled. So these were for ship 26. Which is kind of weird. It's weird to think about ship 26 like that now.
What it could have been, instead it is now flapless, tileless. And the question of what is it for still comes about. And this is a really cool view Mauricio had from the mudflats. I don't see this one often. This is looking at the tents from, like, you'd normally look at from Remedios over this direction and see inside of the like if the store was open, you'd see this area, and like this is really cool. It's just different perspective of the same area. Is there anything else at this site that you want to go over before we hit the rest of it, or any other questions that are coming up, Mauricio?
Not that many questions coming through. The bot's kind of broken on my end, but there was I guess the first question I see here is Michelle was wondering if the new fence has caused any issues yet with getting good at pictures. And have we calculated how tall that fence is over at that newly built fence? It's about 10 feet or so, maybe. Well,
I'm trying to find this fence right here.
right. So yeah, it doesn't right there. I'm standing on top of my truck, so I'm overlooking the fence. So I don't think it's gonna cause any issues. But you know,
It's like a 7-foot fence or something. It's not quite the 8-foot shipping container size, I think.
Yeah, and just wanted to throw it out there that we do try and just focus on what we're trying to shoot. We're not trying to per se. It's kind of tough, right, to be put in that situation. But we're just trying to get the shots of what we want, but we understand the purpose of the fence in the first place. But yeah, I mean, we're doing everything from public property, so. And I mean, aside from other questions, let's see here. I mean, that's about it. I mean, if I have anything else, we'll bring it up later on.
I guess one other thing to touch on briefly is the solar panels. These are Q cells. They are a company, I think it's Korean, that they are working with Tesla directly to do solar panels. And it's just interesting that they are here, but they're not being used yet. They've been here for the past 4-6 weeks, maybe. They I think might go on top of the Star Factory if I'm really thinking about it. That's the best area for something like this. It's got a large surface area. All right, let's go ahead and hit the integration site now. So this is the integration site over here. So we've got just a couple of pictures in this area. So nice view down this direction. There's not usually a whole lot in here to go over, but this is the old BFC shed. It no longer is a shed, no longer holds the BFC crane. This is the door that used to be for that, but you can now see it's an office. So they've got like 2 floors here, and so they've got basically all of the, I think, offices for cranes and everything else that's going off over here, maybe some other stuff. But the really cool area is actually what's going on right here. This is the item we talked about before. There was a question that came up about this directly and using this to lift ships. And this is what we're expecting to see them use here in the, I guess you could say, near future. Anytime you will remove the lifting points of a starship, anytime you want to lift a starship, you will have to use this system to do it. It's still missing one major element, and that will go on the bottom. So like this would be the bottom right here. This will be the top. So this is what you lift by, is these 2 points. So there's a point over here and a point here, and it's a load spreader that will keep these spread out. But anyways, the bottom piece, you have a like a horseshoe shape that will go around all the way from one side to the other. And then you will have, it looks like these are not what I was expecting originally was rubber. These are actually metal plates, and they would be the counterweights for that horseshoe U shape that will be going around this way. And they will go on to here. That's the place that they seem to fit, is that they will basically counterbalance the entire thing so that it's not offset. They have these rubber pads they've been adding on, but it hasn't really changed since last week, so nothing really new there. And I think that should be about it for the integration site. Very quick.
Launch side time.
Yep, stage 0, Zach, and we've got a lot of stuff to go through here. Beautiful site. This is actually near the build site that you took this photo, right, Mauricio? Mauricio, are you there?
We lost him.
Oh, no. But yeah, I think this is from Highway 4. It's a really cool shot. You don't normally get to see it up here. So I think he just ran up to the top of the berm and took a quick shot and then ran back down and was like, okay, we're good.
Cool. Well, I guess we're kind of starting on the opposite side of the tank farm, but maybe we should move over to the other side of the tower.
You want to go for that the fun stuff right now?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, I guess one thing we could talk about before this, obviously, is we had the wet dress rehearsal this past week, and one of the interesting things that well, I guess probably the most interesting thing from the entire wet dress rehearsal was the, and I don't know if you were able to download this in the live comms, Thomas. So there was a really, really large release of methane gas, like during the wet dress rehearsal. And I believe I put a video in there from Rover 1 camera, which shows
Did you put it in today or last
live
week?
comms. Yeah, I put it in live comms probably about an hour ago. Let's see.
I'm not seeing that one.
It's hold on, I'll send it to you right here. You may have to actually download it, but so basically, I mean, if you guys watched it, you will probably remember the very large cloud of gas that came out of Booster 7 near the end of the filling process. So hopefully we'll be able to get this up here. But I think there was a lot of questions when this happened. I know I was definitely kind of shocked to even really see it happen. But I think we have a little bit better understanding now of like what was actually going on. So if we can get that up here, we'll be able to show you
Sorry,
guys.
I was thinking I was like looking at the image and I was looking at my background desktop and I'm like, wait, what?
Like, is that Rover cam? Wait.
What? That's the wrong one.
Rover camera went on a long drive, I guess. Wow.
That was the wrong download. Apparently, I did not download it. Let me try that one more time.
You're fine. Yeah. So, I guess while you're pulling this up, so basically, um, it was really, really odd to see a large release of gas out of the top of the methane tank. I mean, we've really never seen that happen before until that test. So, uh, oh, here we go. Cool. Yeah. So I think this is right before it starts, and there we go. So the important thing to note here is that the methane tanks in the background were clearly still going while this was happening. And so there was some yeah, I've heard a lot of different theories about it being like nitrogen or, uh, all kinds of other things. But this is, and I don't think this is a bad thing, but this is just pure liquid methane coming out. I mean, the pumps are going that what you're seeing coming out is what it would look like pumping methane into the booster while it's empty, essentially, if you were injecting it from the top. That is basically the actual output speed of the pumps coming out of that vent right there. And so the reason to do this is basically because the that vent is located below the top of the dome. And so in order to get fluid above that vent, you need to depress the tanks. And so like while the LOX tank was filling, you would see it vent multiple times in order to release that pressure in order to allow them to keep filling it. But they weren't really doing that with the methane tank. There was no, as far as I remember, venting of the methane tank during that test. But so for that reason, like when you get close to the top, you have a ton of pressure built up at the top of the tank. And so in order to keep filling it, you have to actually release the gas, which is also releases fluid because the fluid level is more than likely above that vent. And I guess the question, the fact that they did it twice was a little interesting to me. I was wondering if it's possible that, they truly had to release the pressure twice, or if this is the automated filling system potentially having a bit of an error. I think that it's pretty clear that they're more than likely not sitting there pushing buttons to stop filling. You know what I mean? It's an automated fill system. So when you're trying to dial that stuff in, I mean, I think, and this is speculation on my part, but I feel like it's a possibility inside of the, control room. They're like, is it going to stop? And that's not the booster. That's the pumps that I'm saying that about, because the booster knows what it needs to do. Like, okay, well, this is overpress right here. I have to let this go. And so I think it could be a combination of things. It could just be like normal procedure, or it could have actually been, dialing in what is the actual top, like what is the amount of time that we need to pump for until it's full. But very, very interesting. I mean, and yes, to some degree, it's like you're not actually seeing the methane per se, because it's, uh, um, condensing the water out of the air around it, right? But uh, this cloud was 300 meters long. Like that is liquid methane coming out of there. There's really no question about that.
It's liquid gasifying immediately. It's causing the condensation. So we're seeing the condensation. And I think we're also seeing the methane as well. Like you can't see methane, but when it's liquid, you can. But when it's gasified like this, it will form the cloud layer with the water and everything else. And it's just crazy that they're doing this.
Absolutely terrifying for me. Like
I'm sitting there thinking,
what is going on?
Yeah, I was like, well, I hope they don't have any open sources of ignition within that gas plume.
The scariest moment for me was when, on the second vent, the LOX vent, the LOX drain on the tower, it's both a drain and a vent, I guess you could call it. More like a depress vent for the actual tower, and it's also the prime up line as well. Kind of complicated, but when the LOX vent was going at the same time, and then the methane cloud like actually combined with it in the air, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is insane. Obviously, with strict procedures, there's like close to no chances of there being a source of ignition. I mean, it would have to come from like the suborbital tank farm, or a bird smoking a cigarette while it's flying or something like that. But other than that, there's really no chances of that actually occurring. So it is, I guess, maybe not anything to worry about. However, uh, you can't at the same time say it's not a big deal, but it is part of the procedure.
So I just think about it and look at it and say they need a bit more of a design change for the burp valve. So you want to get rid of the gas at the top as much as you want or can, and then it will pressurize up. It'll be methane gas, and you just vent that off. And that's what you want to have happen. Is basically it's a pipe that goes to the top and that comes out the side. So that you're keeping it away from the vehicle and keeping it from the interstage section as well. You don't want to trap any gases in there. They're methane because otherwise
I have a solution for this. I have a solution for this, I think. So if I was SpaceX, and obviously they know better than I do, but what I would do is make this bleed pipe go up into the ship instead, and so then you just bleed the methane through the methane bleed line in the ship instead of to atmosphere. So once you this, you put like a T on this pipe, and so yes, it can also vent out the side while the ship is not present. But when the ship is present, it goes up through the ship and out the bleed valve, and then gets recycled. So like it is possible to avoid this. It just takes a complete redesign of the QD system on the tower.
It might be the Ultra Purge, and we're just seeing the old booster versus the new Ultra Purge that's coming about. Maybe that's something going on there.
Yeah. Lots of opportunity for change on this, though, I would say. I mean, I'll say it again, it's just normal procedure at this moment, but I feel like there's zero chance that they want to do this.
So one other element that it's kind of good news on this, it's such rich methane coming out of here. It's not a stoichiometric ratio. So if you're just dumping this out and dumping out LOX at the same quantity in the same spot, like that would be booster or ship 4. Like that would be the worst case scenario. Any ignition source, it will get it. And like this, if it did catch on fire, it would be the outside catching fire. The inside has nothing to burn. It takes a while. So it's a fireball. It's the outside, which would be the rapid explosive area because it's the one with the amount of oxygen that it's selected. And you're still getting some oxygen in the center, but it's just not burning it cleanly. It's more powerful when you burn it through the engines, of course. So that's where it's like 99% of every molecule is combined for methane with the oxygen. And they have the system set up that way so that they can like just get every little bit out of it that they can. So yeah, let me go ahead and get to some ground shots here. That is such a cool part. Thank you for sharing that video from La Padre.
Yeah, of course. So I guess moving on, I'm not really sure if there were too many other changes at the launch site other than, well, I guess we'll start at the boring stuff and then move our way up. So we have some pictures of the bottom of the tower.
Yeah, let's go to the tower. So nothing really changed there on this one.
Well, let's go back to that image actually. Because that shows them installing and we kind of expected this to happen because we saw from the aerial view that these were on site. So you guys can see that they're now installing the protective covers around the stairway. And secretly, every engineer that works at SpaceX is kind of really sad about this because I'm pretty sure they don't mind those stairs because while you're walking up them, you get to see straight up the booster skirt, which is pretty cool. And now they won't be able to do that. It'll be like walking through a prison stairway or something like that. Like very dark.
They're going to need lights in there. That's how bad it's going to be.
For sure. Well, actually, maybe it'll be open on the backside. We don't know if they're going to close it on the backside, but they probably should. Yeah, it'll be interesting to say the least. But yeah, I think that we should expect to at least see those completed before the static fire, which will be interesting because I mean I know we're kind of expecting that static fire this week, right? So Not sure if they've
Any
made
day
more
now.
progress.
Could be
Yeah.
Monday, could be Tuesday, could be Wednesday through Friday. Like they can always push it back, but this week is hopefully the week. The thing though that we're waiting for is probably this though. That's
Yeah.
our holdup, I think.
That's a fun one. So we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier in the episode. Basically, this is the hydraulic power unit on the booster that controls the thrust vector control on the center 13 engines. Probably controls it for like half of them. Actually, I believe it's probably a combined system where both
Yeah.
HPUs are doing the same thing at the same time. But
It's also redundant, I suspect. So if one fails, you still have the other, and it's adequate
Right.
enough.
Exactly. The thing about this being taken off is obviously, I mean, they're not going to do static fires with this off, because currently they are connecting. If you zoom in a little bit more,
I think
you
I've
can
got
see
a
that.
better image. Let me just look for it real quick because it was zoomed into that spot, and I was like, "Yep, I want to use that one." Here we go. So with only one worker instead of three.
Yeah, so you could see the pipe right there where on the left side where normally the hydraulic fluid is it's weird that it actually goes into where the chines. I think there may be a pump in there. But
That's
either
what the
way,
HPU part right here
yeah,
that's
yeah,
missing would
yeah,
be.
it's weird. So basically I think it goes into the booster through the chines for some reason. And right now they have that hose connected to the hydraulic line, and then the hose is going over the side of the launch mount and then all the way down to the bottom of it. I don't know if you have another image that you can show it going down to the bottom. And there is actually a control panel on the ground. I don't know.
Down all the way from over here is what you're saying?
Yeah, there's a control panel on the ground. It's basically a hydraulic power unit. Oh, up and to the right, top right. Yeah, there you go. I think that'll show it.
Yeah, the castor oil, that's what they use for
Yes,
that
and
stuff.
the control panel's right there that your mouse is on. And so that would actually be controlling or replacing the HPU right now. So like if they need to, whatever they're doing, testing the engines or something like that, then they're probably using this to control it since the HPU's gone. But obviously you can't leave that there during a 33 engine static fire. So
That
whatever
would
they're
be
doing right now,
lovely.
yeah, shoot it, like eat it all the way to Mexico.
Well, this direction would
Actually,
go all the
the
way
other
to South Padre Island, and it'd be flaming castrol barrels.
So yeah, I mean, we're definitely waiting for them to finish whatever it is they're doing with this. But it is interesting to know like what some of the delays are about. I mean, obviously they're also changing out an engine right now, or two. I think they've changed out two.
Yeah, they changed them out this morning. They switched it out with the second one, I believe.
Yeah. So, with that being said, once those things are complete, we'll be a little bit closer, but there are some remaining items. But as far as the launch site or the launch mount area, I think this is like one of the only other things that I've noticed.
Yeah, it's the big one. That the other one that is kind of a big one that we see for every static fire. Let me see if I've got a nice overview. This one's perfect. Look how much the legs have been painted. They are
Yeah, they're
painted
nice now.
everywhere except for the backside. They want to protect the front side from static fires, and like even the pipe works. Like this one's not painted, but a bunch of the other ones, like this one, are. So this is for the FireX system right here, and they're painting that, but they haven't painted this one quite yet. That's like a big one to me. It's like every time we have a static fire, we get paint. And it's like, yes, this time we've got more paint than ever before, and it's still not going to be effective for this area, and especially the areas where it's facing it.
Yeah. I mean, it looks good for now. It'll be interesting to see what it looks like again once that test is complete, the 33 engine test.
Yeah,
It'll
it's
be
going to
roasted.
be very interesting.
The most roasted we've ever seen it.
So
I'm
burnt
excited for that.
marshmallow you're looking forward to instead of just overdone?
Yeah. How about grab that image on the right there? The down.
This one right here?
Yeah. So on this image, you can see that they've added plates onto the outside of where the drawworks is. And this is actually interesting because the closest to, I guess, where the launch site is, where the actual launch mount is, there's a plate that looks different than the others. And so I think this is actually a double wall right there. So like they'll probably shave off the little bracket that they use to lift it and then put another plate over this for some reason. I guess it's just a double wall of protection right off of the area where this is going to like curve around the structure. So I
Yeah,
do
this
think
one's
with another
the
flat
interesting
plate.
one right here.
Yeah, I think they'll probably end up covering that as well too. But I don't know if the position of the walkway or the handrails will allow them to do that. They won't need the handrails anymore if they do it. So I guess they could just remove them, but we haven't really seen them start that yet.
Well, it could also be left open so that any trapped gases or heat inside has a way to escape. And in this case, any heat will rise and it will take it from the bottom and go up. But the same thing could be applied for this area too, technically.
Yes, and there is a chance that they cannot close that because I believe behind the drawworks inside of there is a big, huge enclosed concrete room where they are most likely storing like all the computers to control the tower. And so if there's a server room in that room, then the vent to dump all that heat is likely through the backside of this wall, which means that if they close that in, they'd just be building up heat around the drawworks, and they can't do that. So it's highly probable that they'll just leave it open the way it is, which is fine because at least the area that's going to see direct flame is protected.
Yeah, so I did actually think I grabbed a clip of this. It was just a misgrab when I grabbed clips that showed them putting this up here. I don't think I actually have it now. All of a sudden, I don't know where it went. So, never mind. Let's see. Were there other ones to go after before we get to the big one, or do you want to go for the big one?
Well, I mean, we do have the crane laid down right now. Marvin.
So I guess we could segue from that one. That's a good one.
Yeah. So I think
what were they doing? They were doing some repairs on Marvin.
Yeah, I think if we see the front of it, the tip with the block, they may still actually have been working on it while Mauricio was out there. If we have a good shot of it, it's gonna be.
Could be in one of these images
There
here.
we go. Yeah, so you can see that's on the ground, and there's at least one. Wait, what is that sticking out of it?
This right here is the wind vane, the weather vane. So it's the anemometer.
Okay, but there is that one cable that appears to not be connected down there, right?
This is the cable line, I think, right here for the deadhead.
Okay,
so they've got two lifting sources
on that, right?
Could be. This is oftentimes what they work on. Is this will go out, or something up here will go out. They have to replace or change wiring, and it's all very like custom order stuff. It's like you don't have a large supply of these just sitting around unless you're a big contractor who has a lot of these crane parts. Let's say, like for example, not Lieber. Shoot, that's the one that they rented forever. Anyways, any of the companies that they rent cranes from, they would have some extras for parts like this that go bad often enough that they'll have an extra from another crane, for instance. And then they swap it out for this one while it's being actively used.
Yeah, so
tons of ready duct. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they're still building up that pile. We haven't really seen them start to lay that yet. Don't know what it's for.
Mauricio got a Raptor. Nice. It's covered up, but that's really cool that you got to see the Raptor out there.
Yeah, next to the Raptor on the landing pad, if you go, I don't know if that was to the right or left, there's all those job boxes sitting next to this. You got it.
It's not really visible on that one. I see if there's another one that's better.
There you go.
These ones right here.
Yeah. The one to the right is probably better because we can see all of them. So yeah, so all of these, and this is something I kind of posted on well, I haven't posted this, but I did post the we found a job description. Somebody sent me a job description for tower supervisor for night construction. And so if you zoom in on these job boxes, it says night shift tower and tower rigging behind that. All of this stuff, I haven't seen any that say day shift, so weird. It seems like they're going to be doing a lot of work to the tower soon at night. And we don't really know what that is, but tower rigging is interesting. It could tower rigging, I imagine, could be like actual chain hoist or something like that, like a huge chain hoist, so that they can attach it to the top of the tower. I highly doubt it goes all the way to the top with just looking at the size of that box, but it could allow them to like hoist up panels, I think. So there is a possibility that that's what all of this could be used for. But whatever it is, they're planning to do work near the tower soon.
So I mean, the just adding, let's say, the panels to the tower is just a bunch of wrenches essentially, and like this is more than just wrenches. We're looking at whole systems for potentially everything from the chopsticks to the drawworks, the computers, like everything that we've mentioned here is basically at play is what they could be working on and changing, because we might be seeing some extra stuff going on. One thing we saw forever ago with Booster 7 was a piece of paperwork saying that they were looking at doing a flight catch with Booster 7. And it's like, they haven't flown one yet. They haven't even gotten to the point where they could even do a catch, but they might still be headed that direction where they want to be ready if they think that they can do it. And they've got lots of simulation data to do it. As long as the booster is ready and capable of doing it, and their chopstick system is ready, they could go for it on that first launch. It's doubtful, but they could still do it.
It's possible, yeah. And on the note of that rigging system, like a way of getting things up and down, like if you remember the, I'm going to call them like the window washer platforms that could like descend from the top of the tower, like they could theoretically make one that goes from corner to corner, and then they would be able to cover the entire side of the tower with that window washer platform thing.
Yeah, no, that would make sense. You use just a window washer platform that's the length of the tower from each side on the corners, or just each corner, and now you have the ability to put on the scaffolding, and just you have to move back and forth. The big one is the crane. You have to have the large the Liebherr Marvin crane move all of that in place, because there's nothing else that's tall enough, and you have to put in its extensions and everything. But it would be very light load, so that would work out. There's more of the pieces for the stairway here, it looks like. And what is this piece? These are rubber mats. Are these for the
Chopsticks?
chopsticks? Yeah, they look like it.
Yeah, those look thinner than the ones that they had before, so I guess these will allow it to actually butt up against the ship without touching it.
Yeah, another area for the job boxes to work with. And night shift is interesting because they get more stuff done than the day shift, especially during the summer months. So I think they're kind of oriented towards that direction. It's going to be hot out, and they expect it to be that way. Maybe coming up here because it's nearly spring, and it can get pretty hot down there in the spring, or just humid and warm. They've got all these vaporizers back there. I still have no really iota of a clue exactly what they are using those vaporizers for. And then the scaffolding.
There's another interesting thing back there. On the left side, there's a blue. No, you might have to grab another image. Let's see. Scroll up a little bit. You need one that kind of shows a little bit more to the left of all of that, because there was a big blue load spreader. Oh, I think that
I was pointed at that load spreader part right here. This is part of the load spreader right there.
I think it's a different one. If you go to top up, like the top image. No, way too far.
Way too far. Sorry.
So the top. Where did it go? In the middle of the screen, bottom right. Yeah, that one. No. You were just on it. Okay, go to.
You said middle of the screen, bottom right.
There you go.
So
There you go. Click on that one.
this one right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a blue, like weird looking load spreader bar down there. Not really sure what that is, but it looks like it's probably for lifting something.
Okay. So this was actual blue, not the aqua blue I was looking at. It kind of looks like it has a hydraulic unit or something with it, or it could even just be, it's like a corkscrew or a worm drive that it expands and contracts right here. It's hard to see exactly what's going on with this.
Yeah, we definitely need an aerial for that one, but it is something to keep an eye on.
Because there's like a pipe right here. It looks like a hydraulic piece, and it's with it. So that's extremely interesting.
I wonder if that is something that could allow them to like lift the panels up, and then get them closer to the side of the tower without getting the crane super close to it, without getting the block close to it, you know?
Yeah, so it'd be what are those called? It's a counter lever, but this doesn't look like that. This looks to be something that extends and contracts, maybe to push or pull two elements. They do have a system that, as you're describing, in the crane yard over at the integration site to do what you're talking about. It's basically a counter levered arm that you have a weight on one side and your lighter load on the other, and you can basically do exactly what you're describing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go for the good one, the big one. So this will be a second, and I actually have another piece of footage to show it as well. So this is not the one I was clicking on. I think it's the next to it. So this is what we're looking for: is all of this scaffolding, or not scaffolding, the concrete formwork. Yeah. So scaffolding there.
If you guys have seen I released a video early this week about mostly about concrete, but at the end I covered essentially precluding to what this is. And so basically these are bases for large tanks to go on top. And so this is what we believe is more than likely going to be part of the Deluge system. And so if we actually look at, I loaded a series of images in there for Thomas. One of the best images to show this actually was posted by SpaceX that shows what these pads look like. Yeah, that's great.
Here's the video. I just grabbed it while we were going. I was realizing I'm missing this video. So this
is the old one.
Oh, it is the old one, but it does give us a good comparison. So here is this spot right here. I downloaded all of the videos. Let me.
They're actually not on that square.
They're not on this square?
Nope. They did post another image that showed the square, and you couldn't see all of the all of that stuff. Yeah, they're in front of the square.
All right, I got to find the right one here.
That one for you. But I did load a series of images up there. Actually, sorry, I'm going to find that one for you. Just the still image really quickly. Okay,
it should be one of these images here. Nope, these are the old ones still, I think. There's the cryo test, or the WDR, sorry. Oh, here's the video for it.
Yeah, that's the one.
Should be at the end.
I have the still photo and live comms.
Oh, perfect. And I've got all of the still photos now. Thank you. I had to grab those real quick. So here's the end of this one. It looks like you... Oh. Okay, let me switch over.
It's all good, Thomas. Yeah, so while you're... Oh, what is that? Oh,
that's the explosion. Yeah. So here we go. These are the ones that we're kind of talking about here. So here's this is really high res photo.
Semi high res.
Well, I mean, compared to the drone video, it's much better. Sure.
So down there, you can see that there's technically three sets of pads. So the two that are, I don't even know how to describe them. The wider ones right there. So those are basically, they'll put 4 tanks on the top of those. And actually, if you go to one of the other images that I had up there that showed, and this is something I
This
kind
one
of
right
talked.
here, or this one right here?
That one, yeah, that works. So basically, those same 4 tanks will be in that location.
Yeah, I went through and measured these off Google Earth. They were about 56 or 55-foot tanks.
Mm-hmm.
And that square pad that we were looking at originally, that was 75 feet.
Right. And you notice in that image, actually,
Sorry, this one or
the one, yeah, that one.
okay.
So you can see go back one more time. To the one next to it. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see the compressed gas tanks sitting there next to those. So there's actually 5 of those on the way right now. They got shipped with all the pipes, the tanks, and the manifold over there. So all of that stuff got shipped together. Those tanks, you can see when they're stacked on top of each other, are taller than the horizontal tanks. And so I believe that if we go back to the Starbase image, instead of using a single pad, they're using 2, and they may even be able to. The ones on the right side over there will be where those go. Yeah.
The gaseous tanks.
Yes, exactly. I don't know if they'll maybe stack. Well, there's an odd number of them, so there's 5 in total. I don't know if maybe they're all possibly able to fit next to each other right there. I highly doubt it, but maybe a stack of 3 and a stack of 2 next to each other, so that it's not above the tanks, because that area, the flame will curve around the tower and to some degree reach that area. Not very much of it, but it will. And so I think they're just trying to get the compressed gas tanks below the other ones, the water tanks, because if something is going to hit it, they'd rather it hit the water tanks instead of the compressed gas tanks, which will explode. But yeah, and underneath those, in between the foundations of that, you can see that there's no concrete. So there should be a large water pipe underneath there, which will connect to the bottom of those tanks.
And that should be this
The
right here.
The ones underneath the tanks.
Well, the water type would the connection system would probably be this one right here. So it would connect to this directly from both sides.
Well, you see the pipe underneath the tank?
This one right here?
Underneath the 4 tanks. There's a pipe.
This one right there.
Yeah, that connects all 4 of them together.
Oh, I was looking at it backwards. So there's the stands that these go on. That's that elevated position.
Yeah.
So they go from this side where it's elevated to this side where it's elevated.
Yes. And then that pipe goes underneath them and connects all 4 of them together, which makes it pretty clear that those are for water. It's also very, very large pipe that's connected to them. So with the compressed gas tanks being behind them, it's pretty safe to assume that they're going to be using pressurized gas to force the water out and feed the water deluge system. So it'll be a very, very quick burst. Well, not that quick. Probably like, I don't know, if I had to guess, less than 10 seconds.
Well, it's back pressure plus the replacing of the water that you're using. So it's that let's say if you're pulling it with a pump, you have the negative pressure that the pump would cause, but the gaseous pressure would also do 2 things. It would fill in the void, and it would basically force it through if you don't need as much of a pump to do that. So there's a Colorado Springs company, I can't remember its name, but this is something that we've talked about before. They've gone through and installed the tanks at 39A with that same system. It's basically nitrogen gas on one side, and even the 39A tower that they have is basically the same thing there.
Yeah. And it's tough to tell in this image. Like, it almost looks like that's where that square pad used to be, but it's not. It's still outside of this image. So something else is still going to go in that pad. And, let's just play devil's advocate and say that the big tank at the water tank, or the big tank at KSE is LOX, like whether it's LOX or water. I have a feeling that same thing is going right in that location.
So this tank itself is interesting and kind of special. So the bottom of the internal tank, it is concrete. So there would be no way to do cryo with that one. This would be a water tank as well. So the interesting part is it's got a double wall for the water tank. So how they're setting this up or doing it is very weird or interesting. It could be that we're looking at water in between the two tanks. So they've at this point have covered up this area as well now. So this was an area that they had all their scaffolding and let's say scissor lifts or anything else that they're putting up here to work on the inside. So this is a bit of an older image, but it's still pretty cool. It's like this tank itself, from what I could find, should be a water tank. It's just very strange how it's double walled. So you can actually increase pressure up to 3 times for each wall. So you can do like 3 walls technically. It's like an onion. So this one is pressurized on the inside, and then in this one's even additional pressurized. So the amount of pressure you have to go through with the amount of material is even less because you have pressure behind it, and you'd still need a gaseous system to pressurize this tank to a larger limit. But its overall difference is negligible because of that, let's say, inner tank that, let's say, is also holding water.
Yeah, I mean, I also leave open the option for it to be locks, but let's say it was locks. If they do duplicate that tank at Starbase, which to me it kind of looks like might happen, it would suggest that they want to increase their lock storage because I have a feeling this may be more than the 3 GSE tanks, and so like I don't know, maybe you could then convert the LOX tanks to methane, and that would get them back to where they want to be with those vertical methane tanks. And if they remove the LOX from that farm, they may possibly be able to use it for methane. Possibly. I don't know. I don't know if they'll be able to like fully pull that off because there's so much electrical stuff in between those 2 tanks that still violates the rules. But to me, it seems like there's going to be some pretty drastic changes after this launch. And
is this a Greg Scott photo, by the way?
Yes, that is.
Okay. Yeah.
Greg
Thank you. I
Scott
just had to make sure I throw that name out there because that's his image.
And while we're looking at this, you can see that those 3 tanks in the back, the horizontal tanks all got moved to Starbase as well too. So they literally like took apart this tank farm.
Yeah, they still have the kettle boilers. I take it still.
For now.
To reiterate, this one though is that the base structure, they have metal plates at the base and concrete directly below it. Any cryo inside of there would vaporize very quickly because you're talking about a thermal mass, and now you destroy the concrete, which is the structural foundation of the tank itself. And so there's no way I would expect cryo to be in this tank. This would be for water or some other liquid that is more room temperature.
Yeah, I mean, there's a possibility that they put a metal base on the bottom of it, but still, I mean, I just, I don't know, not seeing it.
It doesn't have a bottom dome like this. So if you suspended it with a bottom dome, then you would be able to have a tank, but they had directly a metal base. And this company that is building this tank, that's how they build these water tanks.
Right. Yeah. So very exciting. I mean, the question here is when will this happen? I mean, we know the tanks will show up around February 2nd. And I've posted on Twitter, and I'll say it again here. I definitely believe that they will install it immediately as soon as it arrives. But as we can tell from SpaceX's aerial photo, they have not started doing the groundwork yet to bury the pipes. So that's the question. And obviously, they haven't started tearing up around the launch mount, but they're not going to do something like that while they're still doing while they're preparing for the static fire test. I don't think. After might be a whole different story, but I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. So what you were talking about earlier, that entire spot right here is being occupied because it's right next to that shipping container that we're looking at before.
Yep.
And all of this. So that's an interesting thing to mention. And that pad, now it's just bugging me even more.
Like what is it?
Yeah, like they didn't put any foundations in it yet. It's if you expect to see something large, you'd expect to see foundations where they do pylons or something else to shore up this entire spot if they're expecting a lot of weight there.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. Like right now it's squeezing out a little bit of water, but it's not a whole lot.
Yeah.
It's not doing much.
I mean, we can say for sure now, well, I mean, I feel like we could have said this for a long time, but there will definitely not be a tower in that location.
Yeah. The tower location that we are expecting, let me see if I can scrub through this, would be more over here in this region, according to their original map that they built in 2020. This did not exist in 2020, this spot. Like they were expecting, they had at least 2000, it was like, 2020 later, they built the spot for this. So this all happened here, but they changed their designs a bit. They spread out the legs, I think, at 39A because they decided the way the tape was going to be set up was going to be different.
Yeah,
So,
very interesting.
Yeah, a lot of cool stuff there, and looking at how they've built up the concrete, it really does show you like the formwork, the center line. These are the ones at the end for the nitrogen gas. Let me actually go back to that other picture here, because I don't think I appreciate it as much. There we go. So there's this pad over here, and this was the interesting one. It's like there's supposed to be, you said 2. It looks like there might be 4 of them, or something, because they're really changing this out a lot. I mean, it's actually, a tank would go from this side to this side.
I do see a question in the chat about why no deluge before static fire. I think one of the things to consider is that there's a very big range or there's a very large difference between static fire and launch. If it was me, I mean, so with the 11 engine static fire test, they verified that the autogenous pressurization system works. So there's no need to do a long duration static fire with 33 engines. So literally, I think that what we're going to see is probably one of the shortest static fires that we've ever seen, because they're probably going to get all engines on, not throttle up, and turn off, which means, like, let's just say that it'll be at less than 50% throttle. And so that is nowhere near as damaging as what will happen when they actually throttle up to release the clamps. They're not going to do that during the static fire test. Like, there's zero chance that they're going to go up to 100% throttle on during that static fire test. Very, very risky to do something like that. So with that being said, you have a massive, massive difference between the amount of power that is coming out of, or the amount of just destructive potential that is coming out of that backside of that booster during static fire versus during launch. So they may be able to get away with. I mean, it just may not be as necessary before the static fire, essentially.
So one thing that we'll see here is the entire LOX tank will probably be filled up again, or close to it, because they want to weigh it down. The launch clamps itself, they can only handle so much. The weight will help in balancing that equation out. And we'll see methane up here, maybe 1 or 2 rings at most, I would suspect. And you're looking at like 3 seconds of static fire, 4 seconds, maybe something like that.
I hope it's super, super short.
Yeah, the one thing is like deep throttling. I remember Elon talking about that, and he was saying that the deeper you throttle those engines, the more they want to tear themselves apart. So they're going to be throttled down, but I'm not sure 50% would be able to do that, because that is the deepest I think they throttled to.
What did you say?
50% was the deepest.
I think it's 40,
they throttled.
Right? Doesn't go to 40 is minimum, I think.
I thought it was 50, but this is one that we'll have to go back to the tweets on.
Yeah, it's something around there, but yeah.
But yeah, deep throttling is very risky, and you don't want to do too high or too low. It's somewhere in between.
Yeah.
We have some donations and some questions. Do you mind if I go through them?
Yeah, before you read those, though, I don't know if we've said this at all during the show, but if you guys haven't already, there are a little over 900, I think about 50 of you guys in here. So if you guys haven't hit that like button yet, please do us a favor and hit the like button. See if we can. I bet you we can probably get over 1,000 if everybody uses their fingers and just hits that button for us. So we would appreciate if you guys could do that. And thank you for showing some support.
All right. So we got the first donation here from Jamal Howard, $4.99. With why doesn't SpaceX put a steel plate under stage 0? the reflective blast can't be much worse than the concrete. Would the steel melt?
What's the melting point of steel? That's a question I'd have to ask.
Regular steel is about 2200 degrees. It ranges between 2200 and 2500 degrees. Stainless steel is, I think, 2500 to 2700 degrees. They do make steel that is rated for higher temperature than that. But there's a very clear reason why they're not doing that. I mean, other than some of the well, I can't think of an actual example of a multi-engine launch system that uses a steel diverter ramp. So at the Pad 39A facility, they have in the video. I'm actually going to post this video in the chat right at the end of the show, but it's a little bit misleading right at the beginning because I show the flame trench at Pad 39A, and it looks like it's a bunch of steel plates on a ramp. But what it doesn't show is that they put 4 to 6 inches of material called fondue fire, which is like another proprietary version of fondag from a different vendor. They put 4 to 6 inches of that on top of this ramp. So literally nowhere. I mean, the flame diverter at, or not the flame diverter, I guess you call it that. The little ramp that they have at on the tripod stand at McGregor, like that's different because number one, the engines are way higher in the air. Number two, it's a single engine. So, it's just it's just a completely different. I can't give an exact reason on why you wouldn't put a steel plate underneath it, but I'm pretty sure it's been tried and they know that that's not a good idea.
Well, it's more expensive than fondag. That's the main reason why you wouldn't. So if fondag is not working for some reason, like you could do a steel plate, but you're still transferring that thermal energy somewhere. You have to. And that would have to go into the fondag. So you basically have powderized fondag below it to save your, steel plates. But then it's like they have to bury the rebar or basically some, not rebar, but basically bolts down. That would be the only other way to hold down the steel plates. And it's like, ooh.
That is a very good point, Thomas, because the diverter ramp at Pad 39A, actually 39B, well, I don't know, it's on both of them. It's basically like if you looked at it from a cross-sectional view, is like a triangle, and so there's like void space in the middle of it where they can. I don't know if they do this actually. I haven't looked into it, but I'm assuming that there's some cooling system underneath it that can pull the heat away from the steel if it's even necessary.
The best way to do it is you would have a slightly elevated plate where below it you basically have water, and then in the plate itself you have a lot of holes. That way you basically have your system basically be a water deluge, and they're already doing that to some extent at 39A. It's not a plate, but it's basically a tube around the entire table, and that's going to protect their fondag and the martite that they'll replace over the little patches that get dug up over a period of time. But that's going to be the solution, because it's the thermal and it's really that last part, the energy from the sound that they need to get rid of, because that sound energy, it will hit water, it'll vaporize and turn into basically steam, and it will expand to a ratio of like from 1 to 999 times the volume size. So you see like large steel or like large clouds forming during like Falcon 9's launch, for instance. That's part of it. A little bit of dust and soot from the rocket exhaust as well is in that. But a lot of that's just cloud formation, very rapid cloud formation. So the closest thing you're really going to see to this is like the Falcon 9. The Falcon Heavy is the biggest one that we have that it's very similar in some of these thermal conditions we're looking at. But it's even worse with Starship as far as the thrust and the especially the sound energy side. So they need to convert that to something. 39A, they got it right. We suspected that they were going to do something like that here ages ago. Then they deleted it. So it's like they can always add things onto the design. It's hard to delete something that you don't need.
Agreed. I guess one more thing to add. I'm a little sad we didn't get over 600 likes, but to be fair, I tried watching a YouTube video on my TV the other day and I could not find the like button. So maybe that's the reason. I'll just give that possibility. And that's actually not a bad thing, because if you guys are watching this on the TV, you're getting the true experience, because these are really high quality images, and once you have a huge screen to watch it on, it's really improves that experience. So
Yeah, and one thing to also mention, if you haven't, I would definitely subscribe to the Patreon, even to the lowest tier. Anything helps to keep these flights and the pictures coming. So all ground photos like today's, they're available for all the patron tiers, and that's a huge deal. Like, I don't know of anybody else who does that. And the real big ones are, of course, the flights. So you get some of those pictures. You don't get the whole set for the flights, unless you get like tier 6, I believe. But everything else in between is usually good enough for all of these. It's amazing each week. And we also do the show and tells every about Thursday, Friday, depending on when the pictures have been taken. We'll do them the day of. And so you get basically the in-depth analysis going on live while we're going through these images each week. Even before the weekly videos come out here. It's amazing.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. We've had quite a few donations to stream here. We have another one here by 55 Chevy Guy Steve for $10. The new lifting rig has lifting pins to facilitate getting rid of the lift hook for clean nose cone tiling. But how will the ship be caught by the chopsticks without catch pins under the flaps?
So we've been researching that and going back and looking at Tim Dodd's interview on the second interview for the Star Factory tour. And what we found was that the ship itself will have, according to Elon, something that flips out. So let me see if I can get a good view from the back side of a ship here. Perfect. So the idea would be either use something that would come out here. This is one of the original ideas that David, he looked at this hole and thought, oh, it's going to extend out and they're going to tile over this thing. And that's one way you could do it. But I like the idea that SpaceX already has come up with an idea. They've already got a design in mind, which would be, there would be something that comes out from here. So it'd be from here all the way over, and it would be a catching mechanism. And it would be longer potentially than what would stick out. Like if this was a hydraulic system, it could only stick out so far without taking up too much room in the inside where your payload is supposed to be and other things. So you'd rather have something that just sticks to the surfaces of the skin, and it's strong enough to basically stick out, maybe even lower it down to here so it's not interfering with the flaps as much or in the way. And that would be your catching mount and also potentially your lifting position. At current, let me jump over to the integration side. You were talking about the new lifting mechanism that we were looking at earlier for Starships. The mechanism here, it kind of looks like this, except it would be rotated counterclockwise. It basically has these pin systems that go in it currently for lifting. But what's really cool, these two pieces, these two blocks can be removed. You can use all of the rest of this for the lifting of a ship. You just replace these two blocks with a new system that works with the new catching or lifting mechanism that you will have in the future. All you have to do is pull out these 4 pins, replace these 2 blocks, and you have a new system that's ready for lifting at that point. And that's a really cool way of changing this up. So this will allow a lot more versatility. Hope that answered his question.
All right. And then we have another donation here by John Dopker, $5. Got to get back to work. Gonna miss the end of the show. So I'm going to get my love you bye in now. And thank you, John. I know Rocket Profit gifted 5 memberships. So if you're one of those, make sure you come say thanks to Rocket Profit. And we got Dave W., a new member, and he has a question. It is believed that when CH4 is loaded, the pipes are first pre-chilled with LN2. Zach's video says that only CH4 is used for chilling using the recovery system, not LN2, which is correct.
Well, so as far as LN2, it vaporizes at the temperatures that you're doing for methane. So you can use the nitrogen to pre-chill the lines themselves. And then you would basically dump that out. And then you would have the residues go into the ship and be boiled off directly and basically vented out the ship. or pulled through the rest of the system, but it basically becomes a gas. So you're talking about a large temperature difference. So negative 180 C is what methane would be at, where nitrogen, it vaporizes at a lower temperature. It's like, what was it, like 200? So that's a useful one to look at. That's why they use nitrogen to chill the methane and the LOX, is because it vaporizes at a lower temperature. And so the question on Zach, you have the on your side, it would be reclaimed or use a reclamation system directly?
Well, that is, the reclamation system is the key to that. So as soon as pre-chill starts, you see the recondenser tank for methane start up, and I mean, you wouldn't use that. Like, as they're priming up the system, you can see that tank react to it. So you can't use liquid nitrogen and methane at the same time. And I mean, it has to go through the pumps. So we've never seen the valves for the liquid nitrogen controls frosty, like when they're starting up. It's just not how this system is built. You're either doing liquid nitrogen or methane, but not both.
And you're talking about the orbital fuel farm side specifically.
Yeah, exactly. Just the pre-chill, like, I mean, because the thing is, you don't want to pre-chill something lower than the temperature it's going to operate at, because like the methane will freeze, right? So you just cycle the methane through the system and recycle it back into the tanks constantly,
and then re-chill that that methane back
exactly.
to the condensed methane that you want.
Yes.
Okay, that'll work too.
There is up to 5% nitrogen in the in both fuels, though, which I found was interesting. SpaceX did put that in their report. So I think there is sometimes where they can purge the system out at the end of testing, and so that would result in that nitrogen being within the propellant. But yeah.
But yeah, speaking of which, this is the area to purge. That's why I left it on this image for so long. You see the lines get pre-chilled. You see things dumping directly here, especially for the LOX. This is the methane side up on top. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I remember there was somehow that this was connected on both. Something weird.
Well, the on the methane pipe right there, like you can see the little one that goes up around. No, the upper one.
This one right here.
That actually is.
These are both.
They're both. Yeah, they both do the same thing. It's weird. I haven't fully figured that out yet, truthfully. But basically that is feeding around to the bleed line. So like, instead of sending it up to the back of the BQD, there's no way to vent from the BQD, so you send it to the bleed line, and basically that's what is, that valve is probably open until they're ready to like actually start filling the booster.
Well, wouldn't this be the reclamation line right here then?
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, you're what you're saying would be 100% correct. Then is it's coming through here for the basically the main lines full of methane gas, because it's gasifying as it's going through the whole system. It's coming through here, and that's also why we would see the main heat exchanger that they have. They've got the three small ones, and then the main large one that's part of the reclamation system. That's why we see it start up so much at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Interesting tank farm, that's for sure.
And this one's JP1. Junction point 1? I guess it's a clean out.
Right there. It's so weird. I mean, it does make sense that like if you're pulling gas out of that, you'd want it to come from like a higher location versus like on the bottom. But yeah, it's like a recirculating system right there almost. Still haven't fully figured it out. I'll get it one of these days.
Well, this would be fluids. This should be gases, or unless it's like this one, it's monitoring this line until they get fluids. Then they will switch over to this one.
Yeah, could be.
That's interesting. Anyways, lots of good stuff. I think that this is we're about 14 minutes past, or are we Or are we 45 minutes
way
short?
over.
Okay.
Oh, we got a couple more donations here, so I'll read them out. We got one from PN What, $10. Almost missed the train. Thank you so much. James L, $20. May we have a great merch blast off around the 15th. I'll work on something. Do another merch drop. I know James Wilson wanted a picture of Sunny on a T-shirt, and I did it just now. So maybe Astro Joel can post that link there. But yeah, thanks so much for the donations. We got a lot of questions still, but I don't know if we're going to be able to get around to those. But
Well, is there any good ones we haven't touched, or that should be asked that we haven't touched? I guess that's the main one.
well, let's see. We got one from Krishna J. Will there be an environmental concern when they install the water deluge? Will the water be collected? If yes, how? And is there a drowning possibility because of it for the tank farm?
Well, so the let me switch over to the other images here. Okay, so this is a pretty good one. This entire side right here, as soon as they get permission to, they'll have a retention pond where all of their water will collect. So that will not be an issue, except after a flight. Then it would be potentially a drowning issue if somebody decided to wade through the disgusting, filthy water. But otherwise, it wouldn't be an issue. So,
right. I mean, I guess that's about it. We got a couple more, but
yeah, well, we can answer more questions afterwards, especially for the after show here. If you join our Discord server and are a patron member, you can go through and talk with us. It's kind of like the show and tells. We go through a little bit more and answer questions and talk about other things that come up. So this is one that's still probably one we'd like to talk about. So, and any other questions, we'll actually go through them as well.
sounds good. With that being said, I'm going to say thank you to everybody that joined us today. I think today we maxed out at about 950 some viewers today. So that's definitely a new record for the Starbase Weekly shows. Shows that they're definitely getting more popular amongst everybody. So if you can, share them with somebody. Click the like button. And thank you so much for your support. Just confirmed our flight for Monday at 12 p.m. So we're going to be taking a good look at the weather to make sure it cooperates with us that day. And if not, we'll more than likely do it on Saturday. But just I'll pass this along to Thomas.
Awesome. Thank you, Mauricio. Thank you again for having me. It was a pleasure driving again this week on these ground photos. I'll pass it on to Zach.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks everybody for being here today. I'm going to post a link to that episode that I mentioned earlier. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, please go ahead and check it out. And I will see you all next week. Jax, I guess we will let you finish off.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for coming and watching. We went over, so obviously there was a lot to look at. I think that went pretty well. I actually enjoyed this episode quite a lot. So yeah.
Do you not like the other ones usually?
Somebody got a little bit of foot and mouth disease there.
Right. One last thing. Shout out to Indian Star. She couldn't be with us today, but just wanted to give her a shout out. But with that, I guess main engine cutoff, stage separation confirmed. Love you. Bye.